Hey there, brave souls who ventured into tonight's exploration. Welcome to the darkest corners of our planet, the mysterious depths where nightmares are born and secrets remain eternally hidden. Tonight we're sinking into the abyss to uncover the most unexplainable deep-sea mysteries that have haunted scientists, sailors, and explorers for centuries. The ocean isn't just a body of water. It's an alien landscape right here on Earth, with over 95% of it still unexplored and unmapped. That vast unknown has become the perfect breeding ground for mysteries so profound they challenge our understanding of reality itself. Before we descend into these murky waters together, take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you're ready to face what lurks in the shadows below. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and whether you believe some secrets are better left in the depths. Dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself, because once you know what lies beneath, you might never look at the ocean the same way again. Picture yourself adrift on the open ocean, nothing but endless blue surrounding you, with miles of impenetrable darkness stretching beneath your feet. What you can't see is often more terrifying than what you can, and in the ocean's case, what remains hidden could fill volumes of nightmare fuel. Every square inch of those depths operates under rules that defy our surface-dwelling logic, where pressure becomes a crushing force, where light is a distant memory, and where life has evolved in ways that seem impossible. Scientists estimate that millions of undiscovered species still lurk in those waters, creatures with biological adaptations so alien they might as well be from another planet. But it's not just unknown life forms that make the deep-sea Earth's final frontier. It's the phenomena that cannot be explained, the anomalies that shouldn't exist, and the mysteries that continue to baffle even our most brilliant minds. Let's begin with something that has haunted oceanographers for decades: the unexplainable underwater structures of Yonaguni. Off the coast of Japan, submerged beneath 75 feet of water, lie massive stone formations with sharp angles, straight edges, and terrace features that look suspiciously man-made. Some experts insist these structures were carved by ancient civilizations over 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower and the area was dry land. Others maintain they're merely natural formations, shaped by geological processes over millions of years. What makes this mystery so compelling is the mathematical precision of certain angles found throughout the structures, perfect 90-degree corners that rarely occur in nature. Divers who've explored these underwater monuments report an immediate sense of unease, as if they're trespassing on sacred ground that was never meant to be discovered. Local legends speak of an advanced civilization that angered the gods and was subsequently punished by being swallowed by the sea. If these structures are indeed artificial, they would rewrite human history, pushing back the timeline of advanced human civilization by thousands of years. The most disturbing aspect isn't just the possibility of a lost civilization, it's that something so significant could remain hidden from us for so long, making us wonder what else might be concealed beneath the waves. Now let's drift into even darker waters, the mystery of the underwater sounds that have left scientists sleepless for decades. In 1997, NOAA hydrophones picked up an ultra-low frequency sound in the South Pacific that was so loud it was detected over 3,000 miles away. This sound, nicknamed the bloop, was stronger than any sound a living animal should be able to produce, yet it matched the audio pattern of a biological source, not a mechanical or geological one. For years, scientists were baffled, wondering what creature could possibly generate a sound loud enough to be heard across an entire ocean. The official explanation eventually settled on ice calving, large icebergs breaking apart, but many researchers remain unconvinced, pointing out inconsistencies in the acoustic signature. Some oceanographers still whisper about the possibility of a creature so massive, so ancient, that it dwells in the deepest trenches, rising only rarely to the higher waters. Indigenous legends from coastal regions around the Pacific speak of enormous beings that live in the ocean's deepest parts, beings that have existed since before humans walked the earth. Whether you believe the ice explanation or not, the recording itself is deeply unsettling. When sped up to audible range, it sounds disturbingly like a monstrous groan echoing through the darkness. But the bloop isn't the only unexplained sound haunting our oceans. In 1991, a submarine sound detection system picked up a continuous tone that repeated at regular intervals for over a year before suddenly stopping. This sound, dubbed the upsweep, has never been conclusively explained, though theories range from volcanic activity to some unknown human-made source. What makes it particularly eerie is the regular, almost intelligent pattern, as if something was deliberately sending a signal. Then there's Julia, a 15-second scream-like sound detected in 1999 that rose rapidly in frequency, like a terrified whale before abruptly cutting off. Most disturbing of all might be the whistle, a high-pitched sound recorded in the deepest part of the Mariana Trench that shouldn't be possible, according to our understanding of acoustics at that depth. Some oceanographers have suggested these sounds represent an entire language of the deep that we're only catching fragments of communication between species we haven't even discovered yet. The ocean is never truly silent. It's filled with a constant symphony of sounds we're only beginning to catalog and understand. What keeps scientists up at night isn't just what they're hearing, it's wondering what's making these sounds and why we can only hear them when they choose to reveal themselves. Speaking of revealing themselves, let's dive into one of the most persistent mysteries of the deep, the megamouth shark, a creature so elusive it wasn't discovered until 1976. Imagine a 16-foot shark with a mouth that can open nearly 5 feet wide, designed to filter feed in the darkness of the deep, yet somehow remaining completely unknown to science until less than 50 years ago. Fewer than 100 specimens have ever been documented, making it rarer to witness than some mythical creatures of folklore. This raises a chilling question. If something as massive as the megamouth shark could evade scientific discovery until the late 20th century, what else might be lurking down there? The discovery of the megamouth fundamentally changed how marine biologists view the ocean. It was a humbling reminder that our knowledge has barely scratched the surface. Even more unsettling is the realization that the megamouth isn't an ancient relic. It's been swimming in our oceans all along, invisible to us, despite its enormous size. Local fishermen in various parts of the world had reported seeing these creatures for generations, but their stories were dismissed as tall tales or misidentifications. How many other legends and fishermen's stories might actually be glimpses of real creatures that science has yet to acknowledge? This brings us to one of the most bizarre mysteries, the underwater crop circles discovered off the coast of Japan in 2014. These perfect geometric patterns, spanning up to 7 feet in diameter, appeared on the sandy ocean floor seemingly overnight, baffling divers who discovered them. Unlike their controversial counterparts on land, these underwater formations had a verifiable creator, a tiny pufferfish just a few inches long. The male pufferfish spends days creating these intricate patterns to attract a mate, using only his fins to move sand into symmetrical ridges and valleys of astonishing complexity. What's truly mind-boggling is the mathematical precision involved. These tiny fish somehow create near-perfect circles with detailed geometric patterns without any ability to see their creation from above. How does a creature with a brain smaller than a pea possess the ability to create such complex geometric art with no overhead perspective? Some marine biologists suggest this represents a form of intelligence we don't understand, a spatial awareness that operates on principles entirely foreign to human cognition. Others wonder if there's some form of inherited genetic memory at work, a biological algorithm passed down through countless generations. Perhaps most unsettling is the realization that we only discovered this phenomenon by accident, making us wonder how many other remarkable behaviors and creatures remain hidden in the depths. Now let's plunge into one of the most enduring maritime mysteries, the Bermuda Triangle, where ships and aircraft seem to vanish without explanation. While skeptics are quick to dismiss the Bermuda Triangle as mere myth, the ocean floor in this region tells a different, more disturbing story. Recent mapping expeditions have revealed massive craters on the seabed, some over half a mile wide, that weren't formed by any known geological process. These craters align with areas where methane hydrates are known to exist, frozen methane gas trapped in the ocean floor that can suddenly release as temperatures change. When these methane bubbles burst to the surface, they dramatically decrease water density, potentially causing ships to sink instantly without even enough time to send a distress signal. The methane released can also rise into the air, affecting aircraft engines and electronic equipment, possibly explaining why so many planes have disappeared in the region. What's truly terrifying about this theory is that these methane releases are becoming more common as ocean temperatures rise due to climate change. Some oceanographers fear we might see an increase in unexplained disappearances as formerly stable methane deposits begin to destabilize across the world's oceans. The Bermuda Triangle might not be supernatural, but the natural explanation is perhaps even more frightening. Invisible death traps that can form without warning, leaving no survivors and no wreckage. Let's drift now to the Baltic Sea, where in 2011, ocean explorers discovered something that shouldn't exist, a perfectly circular object resting on the seafloor, with structural features that appear distinctly artificial. Nicknamed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, this 200-foot diameter formation has straight lines, right angles, and what appear to be staircase-like structures descending into the seafloor. Initial sonar scans revealed an object eerily similar to the fictional Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, complete with what looked like a runway or impact trail stretching behind it. More disturbing were the reports that electronic equipment mysteriously malfunctioned whenever divers approached within 200 meters of the object. Despite intense interest, few comprehensive studies have been conducted, partly due to the extreme difficulty of working at that depth and the equipment failures that plague every expedition. Sample analysis from the structure has yielded contradictory results. Some tests indicate it's made of natural stone, while others detect metal compounds that shouldn't naturally occur in that environment. The Swedish government has shown surprisingly little interest in determining what lies beneath their waters, leading to speculation about official suppression of information. Whatever the Baltic Sea anomaly is, a natural geological formation, a man-made structure, or something else entirely, its discovery reminds us that the seafloor remains one of the least mapped surfaces on our planet. We have better maps of Mars than we do of our ocean floors, a sobering thought when you consider what might be hiding down there, just beyond our knowledge. Speaking of what might be hiding, let's explore one of the most haunting marine mysteries, USOs, or unidentified submersible objects, the underwater equivalent of UFOs. For decades, Navy personnel from countries around the world have reported encounters with objects moving underwater at impossible speeds, sometimes exceeding 100 knots, far faster than any known submarine technology. These objects reportedly perform maneuvers that defy our understanding of physics, including instant acceleration, right-angle turns at high speed, and the ability to transition seamlessly between air and water. In 2004, the USS Nimitz encountered such an object, which was tracked by multiple radar systems dropping from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second, then proceeding to outmaneuver F-18 fighter jets before disappearing into the ocean. What's particularly chilling about these accounts is their consistency across time and geography. Similar reports have come from naval officers of different countries, across different decades, with remarkably similar details. Some theorists suggest these USOs represent an intelligent species that evolved in our oceans, entirely separate from surface civilization, possessing technology far beyond our own. Others propose they might be extraterrestrial in origin, using our oceans as a convenient hiding place. After all, it's much easier to remain undetected underwater than in our increasingly monitored skies. Navy whistleblowers have described classified programs dedicated to tracking these objects, with some reports indicating that certain deep ocean trenches serve as hotspots for USO activity. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this mystery isn't the possibility of non-human intelligence in our oceans. It's the possibility that something has been sharing our planet with us all along, observing us while remaining largely unobserved themselves. Now let's sink even deeper into the mysteries of bioluminescence, specifically the phenomenon of Milky Seas that has puzzled sailors for centuries. Imagine sailing through the darkness, when suddenly the ocean begins to glow, not just in small patches, but across the entire horizon, as if the stars themselves had fallen into the sea. These rare events, where the ocean emits a steady, ghostly white glow across areas sometimes larger than the state of Connecticut, have been reported by sailors since at least the 17th century. Unlike typical bioluminescence, which flashes or sparkles when disturbed, Milky Seas emit a continuous, uniform glow that can last for days and be visible from space. Scientists now believe these events are caused by bioluminescent bacteria, communicating with each other through a process called quorum sensing, essentially coordinating their glow across billions of organisms. What remains unexplained is why these bacteria suddenly decide to coordinate on such a massive scale, and how they maintain this communication across such vast distances. Some microbiologists suggest this represents a form of bacterial bloom consciousness, a primitive network intelligence emerging from billions of simple organisms working in concert. Perhaps most eerie is the timing. These events often occur in remote areas with little human presence, as if the ocean is performing this light show primarily for itself. Sailors who have witnessed Milky Seas often report a profound sense of both wonder and unease, as if they've stumbled upon something ancient and unknowable, a conversation between primordial life forms that began long before humans existed. Let's now explore one of the ocean's most perfect mysteries: underwater crop circles that weren't made by pufferfish, but seemingly by something else entirely. Off the coast of Vortex Springs, Florida, divers discovered a series of perfect circles in the sand, each about 30 feet in diameter, arranged in a geometric pattern that suggested intelligent design. Unlike the Japanese pufferfish circles, no known creature has been observed creating these formations, and they appear in areas where the pufferfish doesn't exist. The circles are too perfect to be explained by current patterns, with sharp, defined edges that would require deliberate creation rather than natural water movement. Even more baffling is their persistence. Despite underwater currents that should erase them, these circles maintain their shape for months at a time, defying natural explanation. Some marine biologists speculate they could be the work of undiscovered species, while others suggest more prosaic explanations like divers creating them as an elaborate hoax. Local indigenous legends speak of water spirits that create perfect circles as doorways between worlds, a mythology that seems fanciful until you're hovering above one of these unexplained formations. Whatever their origin, these circles represent another layer of mystery in an already enigmatic environment, patterns of apparent intelligence emerging from a realm we barely understand. Now let's surface briefly to examine one of the strangest phenomena reported by sailors throughout history: phantom islands that appear and disappear from our maps. Since the early days of ocean exploration, sailors have documented islands that were mapped, visited, and described in detail, only to vanish completely when later expeditions tried to find them. One of the most famous was Sandy Island, located between Australia and New Caledonia, which appeared on maps for over a century before a 2012 research vessel discovered nothing but open ocean at its supposed location. In some cases, these phantom islands were likely mapping errors or deliberate falsehoods created by captains wanting to claim new territories. But others were reported by multiple independent vessels, with consistent descriptions and locations, only to prove unfindable by subsequent voyages. Some oceanographers theorize that certain volcanic islands might temporarily rise above sea level during periods of intense seismic activity, only to sink back beneath the waves years or decades later. Others point to the possibility of massive floating mats of vegetation and debris, sometimes spanning miles, that can appear island-like from a distance before eventually breaking apart. Perhaps most intriguing are the accounts of islands that seem to change location, being reported by reliable navigators in slightly different coordinates on each sighting. Indigenous maritime cultures across the Pacific have long maintained that certain islands move, following paths known only to those who understand the secret language of the sea. Modern science dismisses such notions, yet the historical record contains dozens of islands that were once considered factual but have since vanished without explanation. Diving back beneath the surface, let's explore one of the most persistent mysteries: the underwater structures found near Cuba that challenge our understanding of human history. In 2001, advanced sonar equipment detected a series of geometric structures resting on the seafloor in the Yucatan Channel at a depth of over 2,000 feet. These structures appear to include pyramids, circular buildings, and what look like roadways, all arranged in patterns reminiscent of urban planning. Marine geologists initially dismissed them as natural formations, but closer analysis revealed right angles, symmetrical designs, and what appear to be inscriptions on some of the structures. What makes this discovery particularly baffling is the depth. This area would have last been above water over 12,000 years ago, long before any known civilization capable of such construction. If these structures are artificial, they would predate the oldest known advanced civilizations by thousands of years, completely rewriting our understanding of human history. Despite the potentially revolutionary nature of this find, funding for further research mysteriously dried up, and no major scientific expedition has thoroughly investigated the site since its discovery. Some archaeologists speculate that evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations might be primarily underwater, as rising sea levels since the last ice age have covered coastal areas where early humans would likely have settled. The ocean may be hiding not just biological secrets, but archaeological ones as well. The true history of humanity might be inscribed not in the earth, but in the seabed. Let's now examine one of the most scientifically perplexing deep-sea mysteries: the underwater rivers and lakes that shouldn't exist. At the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico lies a phenomenon that defies intuition: actual rivers and lakes of water within water, complete with shorelines, rippling surfaces, and even waves. These underwater bodies aren't water at all, but super dense brine solutions, water so saturated with salt and minerals that it's significantly heavier than the surrounding seawater. These brine pools and rivers flow along the seafloor, creating distinct boundaries where specialized ecosystems have evolved, with creatures adapted to life on the shorelines of these toxic underwater lakes. What perplexes scientists is the stability of these formations. Some have maintained the same shape and course for decades, or possibly centuries, despite being composed of liquid. Even more mysterious are the waterfalls, where these brine rivers flow over underwater cliffs, creating cascades that appear to defy the laws of fluid dynamics. Creatures that swim into these dense brine pools often die instantly, creating eerie shorelines littered with the preserved remains of marine life, underwater killing fields that serve as stark boundaries between habitable zones. Some of these brine pools contain chemical compositions, unlike anything else on Earth, with unique microorganisms that have evolved in isolation for potentially millions of years. These underwater rivers and lakes represent entire alien ecosystems, existing right here on Earth, operating under rules so different from our familiar world that they might as well be on another planet. Now let's sink into one of the most enduring deep-sea mysteries: the unexplained disappearance of submarines that has haunted naval forces around the world. Since the advent of submarine technology, numerous vessels have vanished without explanation, sometimes in calm seas and perfect weather conditions, leaving no debris and no distress signals. One of the most baffling cases remains the USS Scorpion, an American nuclear submarine that disappeared in 1968, with 99 crew members, discovered months later on the seafloor with damage patterns that still defy explanation. What makes these cases particularly disturbing is that submarines represent the pinnacle of naval engineering, designed specifically to survive the harsh conditions of the deep ocean. Some naval experts whisper about encounters with massive unknown creatures capable of damaging even hardened submarine hulls, though such theories rarely make it into official reports. Others point to unexplained phenomena like underwater electrical discharges or sudden density changes that could compromise even the most sophisticated vessels. Submariners themselves have folklore about the calling, mysterious sounds or sensations that experienced crew members learn to recognize as warnings to leave certain areas of the ocean immediately. Perhaps most chilling are the final communications from some of these vessels, which sometimes include references to unusual sounds, unexpected movements, or unexplained objects prior to losing contact. The ocean depths remain one of the most hostile environments humans have ever attempted to penetrate, and sometimes it seems as if the abyss itself is rejecting our presence. Let's surface briefly to examine one of the most persistent surface mysteries, rogue waves that seem to defy the laws of hydrodynamics. For centuries, sailors reported encountering walls of water, reaching heights of over 100 feet that would appear suddenly on calm seas, often described as holes in the ocean with water rising on all sides. These accounts were dismissed as maritime tall tales until 1995, when an oil platform in the North Sea recorded a 95-foot wave appearing suddenly in otherwise moderate conditions. What makes rogue waves particularly mysterious is that they don't follow the standard physics of wave formation. They can be 3 times higher than surrounding waves and appear from directions counter to the prevailing current. More disturbing is their apparent selectivity. Rogue waves sometimes seem to target specific vessels while leaving nearby ships untouched, leading to sailor superstitions about the ocean choosing its victims. Modern oceanographers believe these monsters form through a process called constructive interference, where multiple wave patterns temporarily align to create a single, massive peak. Yet this explanation doesn't fully account for their reported frequency or the seemingly impossible heights described by credible witnesses throughout maritime history. Some theoretical physicists have suggested that rogue waves might represent a rare glimpse of quantum effects operating at a macro scale, essentially, probability waves briefly manifesting in physical form. Whatever their cause, rogue waves remind us that the ocean's surface can become as dangerous and unpredictable as its depths, sometimes swallowing ships and crews without warning or explanation. Now let's plunge into the mystery of deep-sea gigantism, the unexplained tendency for creatures in the deep to grow to enormous sizes compared to their shallow water relatives. The classic example is the giant squid, which can reach lengths of over 40 feet, but this phenomenon applies across species from isopods the size of footballs to crabs with 12-foot leg spans. What puzzles marine biologists is that this pattern seems to contradict evolutionary logic. The deep sea is a food-scarce environment where smaller, more energy-efficient bodies should be favored. Yet something about the extreme depths pushes life toward gigantism, as if the abyssal environment itself is sculpting creatures toward ever larger forms. Some scientists theorize that reduced predation pressure in the deep allows species to reach their maximum size potential, while others suggest that larger bodies help manage the crushing pressure. More controversial theories propose that something about the deep-sea environment might be affecting genetic expression itself, perhaps through poorly understood interactions between pressure, temperature, and DNA. What's particularly unsettling is that we keep discovering larger and larger specimens of known deep-sea species, suggesting we may not yet have found the upper size limits for many of these creatures. Perhaps the most disturbing implication is that truly enormous specimens might exist in the unexplored depths, leviathans that remain hidden, simply because they inhabit the most inaccessible parts of our planet. The legends of sea monsters that have persisted across cultures for thousands of years might not be mere fantasy, but glimpses of real biological giants that surface rarely enough to seem mythical. Speaking of creatures that seem mythical, let's explore one of the most enigmatic denizens of the deep, the Greenland shark, a living fossil that challenges our understanding of vertebrate lifespan. These ghostly predators can live for over 400 years, making them the longest-lived vertebrates on Earth, with some specimens swimming today that were born before the United States existed. What mystifies biologists is how these sharks manage to live so long in the harsh Arctic waters, with a metabolism so slow that they grow less than a centimeter per year and don't reach sexual maturity until around 150 years of age. Their flesh contains high levels of trimethylamine N oxide, making it toxic to most other creatures, yet indigenous Arctic peoples developed fermentation techniques to make the meat edible, resulting in hakarl, possibly the most foul-smelling food on Earth. Perhaps most eerie is their appearance. Their slow metabolism means they're often covered in parasites, and their eyes are frequently rendered blind by copepods that attach themselves to the corneas, giving the sharks a zombie-like appearance. Despite this apparent disadvantage, these blind giants continue to hunt successfully in the dark depths, suggesting they possess sensory abilities we don't fully understand. They are living time capsules. A single Greenland shark might have witnessed the sinking of the Titanic, both world wars, and the moon landing during its long, silent journey through the cold darkness. What knowledge might be encoded in the brains of these ancient beings? What patterns of ocean and life might they have observed across centuries of existence? The mystery of their longevity remains unsolved. What biological mechanisms allow them to evade the cellular degradation that limits other vertebrates to mere decades of life? These silent witnesses to centuries of history glide through the darkness like living ghosts, connecting us to a past beyond human memory, their very existence a mystery science has yet to unravel. Now let's explore a phenomenon that has left oceanographers scratching their heads: underwater sound channels that can carry whispers for thousands of miles. Deep in the ocean exists a layer called the SOFAR channel, sound fixing and ranging, where temperature and pressure conditions create a sort of acoustic highway that can carry sounds across entire ocean basins. Whales have evolved to use this channel for communication, allowing their songs to reach others of their kind up to 10,000 miles away, essentially creating a planetary-scale communication network. What puzzles scientists is the efficiency of this natural phenomenon. Sounds traveling through the SOFAR channel lose almost no energy over vast distances, a feat our best telecommunications technology can't match. More mysterious still are the unexplained sounds that appear in this channel, signals that match no known natural source, but travel these sound highways around the globe. Some researchers have detected what appear to be artificial patterns in these sounds, repeated sequences that suggest some form of communication, rather than random natural processes. Military organizations have used this channel for submarine detection since World War II, leading some to speculate that unidentified sounds could be evidence of unknown submersible vessels using acoustic methods to navigate. Perhaps most unsettling is the possibility that entire conversations between unknown entities could be occurring in these deep water sound channels, audible only to those with the technology to listen at those specific depths. The ocean has its own Internet of Sound, a communication network that predates humanity by millions of years, carrying messages we're only beginning to learn how to intercept. Let's now descend to one of the most otherworldly environments on Earth, the deep-sea hydrothermal vents that have revolutionized our understanding of where life can exist. These underwater geysers spew water heated to over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, filled with toxic chemicals and heavy metals that would be lethal to most life forms. Yet against all odds, these vents support some of the most densely populated ecosystems on the planet, with specialized creatures that have evolved to thrive in conditions that would instantly kill surface-dwelling organisms. What baffles scientists is that these ecosystems don't rely on sunlight at all. Instead, they're powered by chemosynthesis, where bacteria convert toxic chemicals into energy through processes that weren't even thought possible until their discovery. These vent communities represent an entirely different evolutionary path, life that developed completely independently of the sun's energy, raising profound questions about how life might evolve on other worlds. Even more mysterious are the connections between widely separated vent communities, identical species appearing at vents thousands of miles apart, despite having no apparent means of traversing the hostile deep-sea environment between them. Some biologists suggest there might be undiscovered networks connecting these isolated oases of life, hidden passages through the Earth's crust that allow creatures to migrate between distant vents. Others propose even more radical theories that life might actually have originated at these vents rather than in the primordial soup of surface waters, making these bizarre ecosystems the original cradle of all life on Earth. If true, it would mean that everything alive today, including us, descended from organisms that evolved to thrive in what we would consider a toxic alien environment. Perhaps we ourselves are the real aliens, having migrated away from our true evolutionary home in the lightless depths to the strange, radiation-bathed world of the surface. Speaking of alien environments, let's explore one of the most recently discovered and least understood ocean mysteries, the massive underwater lakes of the deep sea. These aren't the brine pools we discussed earlier, but actual bodies of fresh water trapped beneath the seafloor, enormous reservoirs containing water that's been isolated from the rest of the planet for tens of thousands of years. Scientists estimate that the volume of fresh water contained in these undersea aquifers may exceed the volume of all the surface fresh water on Earth. Essentially, there's another set of Great Lakes hidden beneath the ocean floor. What makes these underwater lakes truly baffling is their composition. The water in them is often fresher and of different chemical composition than any water found on the surface today. Some of these aquifers contain water from the last ice age, providing a time capsule of Earth's hydrosphere from 20,000 years ago, preserved in pristine condition beneath hundreds of feet of rock and sediment. More mysterious still is the life these hidden lakes contain. Preliminary samples have revealed microorganisms unlike anything in our current biological catalogs, species that have been evolving in isolation for millennia. These aquifers challenge our understanding of Earth's water cycle, suggesting that significant portions of our planet's fresh water may move through deep channels completely separate from the surface systems we've mapped. Perhaps most significant is what these discoveries mean for our search for extraterrestrial life. If substantial bodies of fresh water can exist hidden beneath Earth's oceans, similar reservoirs might exist beneath the surfaces of Mars or Europa. The implications extend beyond science to resource management. These massive freshwater reserves could potentially alleviate water scarcity in coastal regions, if we can develop the technology to access them without contamination. Once again, the deep ocean reveals that our planet contains entire worlds within worlds, hidden realms that operate according to their own rules, untouched by human influence. Now let's examine one of the most enduring deep-sea mysteries, the extraordinary navigational abilities of marine creatures that science still cannot fully explain. Sea turtles, hatched on tiny islands in the middle of vast oceans, somehow navigate back to the exact same beaches decades later to lay their eggs, maintaining this cycle with remarkable precision. Even more baffling are the journeys of eels, which migrate thousands of miles from inland rivers across Europe to breed in a specific region of the Sargasso Sea, a feat requiring navigation across both fresh and saltwater environments. Scientists have discovered that many marine species can detect Earth's magnetic field, essentially giving them a built-in compass, but this doesn't explain how they locate specific geographic locations with such accuracy. Some researchers propose that these creatures might be using quantum entanglement processes in their brains to detect minute variations in Earth's magnetic field, essentially employing quantum computing for navigation. Others suggest they might be following underwater sound channels, chemical gradients, or even patterns in the flow of ocean currents that humans lack the sensory equipment to perceive. Perhaps most mysterious is how this navigational information is passed between generations. How does a sea turtle that has never seen its birth beach find its way back to the exact same stretch of sand? These extraordinary navigational feats suggest that marine life perceives the ocean in ways fundamentally different from our understanding. They're reading maps invisible to human senses. The ocean appears to contain directional information that we remain largely blind to, despite our technology, layers of navigational data that marine life has evolved to interpret over millions of years. Our inability to explain these navigational abilities reveals the limits of our understanding. There are aspects of the ocean's nature that remain beyond our scientific grasp. Let's now explore one of the most persistent mysteries of the deep, the unexplained underwater lights reported by submariners and deep-sea explorers for decades. At depths where no sunlight penetrates, divers and submersible operators have reported seeing unexplained lights moving in patterns that suggest intelligent control rather than bioluminescent organisms. Unlike the flashes or steady glows of known bioluminescent creatures, these lights reportedly change direction at angles impossible for known marine life, sometimes approaching vessels before darting away at incredible speeds. Particularly baffling are accounts of multiple lights moving in formation or appearing to respond to human presence, behaviors that imply either unknown species with sophisticated group dynamics or something even more inexplicable. The classified logs of military submarines reportedly contain numerous encounters with these phenomena, often in the deepest parts of the ocean, where human vessels rarely venture. Some marine biologists speculate these could be undiscovered bioluminescent organisms with mobility far beyond known species, perhaps using jet propulsion similar to squid, but vastly more efficient. More controversial theories suggest the possibility of intelligent underwater species that have evolved sophisticated light-based communication, or even technology, remaining hidden in the vast unexplored regions of the deep ocean. What makes these accounts particularly credible is that they often come from experienced military personnel and scientific researchers, people specifically trained to accurately observe and report their surroundings. Whether these lights represent unknown biological phenomena or something more extraordinary, they remind us that the deepest parts of our oceans remain as mysterious and unexplored as distant planets. Let's surface briefly to examine one of the strangest phenomena observed in our oceans: enormous underwater wheels of light that have mystified sailors for centuries. Historically known as wheels of Poseidon, these circular patterns of luminescence can span up to 150 meters in diameter and appear to rotate on the water's surface like massive glowing cartwheels. Unlike Milky Seas, which remain relatively stationary, these wheels spin visibly, sometimes at speeds approaching 20 knots, creating the illusion of a massive luminous machine operating just beneath the waves. What puzzles marine biologists is the perfect geometric nature of these formations. Precise circles with evenly spaced spokes radiating from a central hub, all composed of living light. Some scientists propose these are caused by bioluminescent organisms responding to underlying circular current patterns, perhaps triggered by underwater seismic activity. Others suggest they might represent a previously unknown collective behavior of certain marine species, a synchronized display serving some biological purpose we don't yet understand. Historical accounts from ship's logs dating back to the 16th century describe these wheels in remarkably consistent terms, suggesting they're a genuine phenomenon rather than misidentified natural events. The wheels appear most commonly in the Indo-Pacific region, particularly in the waters around Indonesia, though similar phenomena have been reported in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. What makes these wheels particularly mysterious is their apparent intelligence. Sailors report that they sometimes seem to follow ships or change direction when approached, behavior impossible to explain through simple current patterns. These massive rotating mandalas of living light represent another facet of the ocean that reminds us how little we truly understand about the planet we inhabit. Now let's dive into one of the most puzzling geological mysteries of the deep, the perfectly spherical stone balls found on the ocean floor around the world. These stone spheres, ranging from a few inches to several feet in diameter, appear with such perfect roundness that they seem manufactured rather than naturally formed. What perplexes geologists is that these balls appear in deep ocean locations, separated by thousands of miles, yet share nearly identical composition and appearance. The spheres are typically found partially embedded in the seafloor, often arranged in patterns that suggest they rolled into position rather than forming in place. Some marine geologists propose they formed through a process called concretion, where minerals gradually accumulate around a core over millions of years, yet this doesn't explain their remarkable sphericity. Others point to the possibility of ancient civilizations creating these objects for purposes unknown, though the depths at which some have been found makes this explanation problematic. Indigenous legends from multiple coastal cultures refer to the ocean's marbles or the eggs of sea gods, stones of perfect roundness that wash ashore after great storms, considered objects of mystical significance. Modern analysis has revealed that many of these spheres contain unusual mineral compositions, including metals rare in marine environments, further deepening the mystery of their origin. Whether natural anomalies or artifacts of unknown origin, these perfect stone spheres represent yet another enigma delivered from the depths of our oceans. Let's now explore one of the most scientifically baffling discoveries of recent years: the underwater complex crop circles found off the coast of Western Australia. Unlike the pufferfish circles we discussed earlier, these formations span hundreds of feet in diameter and exhibit mathematical precision that would require sophisticated planning to create. The patterns include perfect equilateral triangles, nested circles with precise radii relationships, and straight lines intersecting at exact 60-degree angles, geometry that rarely occurs naturally. Marine biologists initially suspected these might be the work of unknown species, but the scale and precision involved would require organisms far larger and more intelligent than any known to science. Remote underwater vehicles deployed to monitor these areas have never captured any creature creating these formations, despite hundreds of hours of surveillance. More puzzling still, these patterns often appear overnight in areas where constant current should make such precise geometric work impossible. Some researchers have noted similarities between these underwater formations and certain crop circles found on land, leading to speculation about common origins. Local Aboriginal traditions speak of spirit beings that create sacred geometry on both land and sea, maintaining balance between different realms of existence. Scientific expeditions to study these formations often report equipment malfunctions and navigation errors when approaching the sites, adding another layer of mystery to an already inexplicable phenomenon. Whether created by unknown biological entities, natural processes we don't understand, or something even more extraordinary, these underwater crop circles represent one of the ocean's newest and most perplexing mysteries. Let's dive deeper into one of the most disturbing oceanic mysteries: the underwater graveyards, where marine creatures appear to deliberately go to die. Marine biologists have discovered locations on the seafloor where the remains of specific species accumulate in numbers far greater than can be explained by random death patterns or current flows. Unlike whale falls, which occur when a single large animal dies and sinks, these graveyards contain hundreds or thousands of individuals of the same species, often arranged in patterns suggesting deliberate placement. Particularly baffling are shark graveyards found in specific areas of the Pacific, where multiple species of sharks appear to congregate before death, a behavior that contradicts everything we know about these solitary predators. Analysis of these remains often shows no obvious cause of death, no signs of disease, predation, or environmental factors that would explain why so many creatures would die in the same location. Some marine biologists have proposed that certain species might have instinctual end-of-life behaviors, similar to the mythical elephant graveyards, where they seek out specific locations when they sense death approaching. Others suggest these sites might have unique geomagnetic properties that interfere with the navigational abilities of marine life, essentially creating natural traps that disorient creatures until they succumb to exhaustion. Perhaps most unsettling is the discovery that some of these graveyards have been actively used for hundreds or even thousands of years, suggesting a consistent pattern rather than an anomalous event. These underwater necropolises raise profound questions about the cognitive lives of marine species. Might some possess awareness of their own mortality and cultural practices around death that we've never recognized? The ocean keeps many secrets, but these deliberate-seeming graveyards might be among the most profound, potentially revealing aspects of marine life consciousness that science has yet to acknowledge. Now let's explore one of the most recently discovered and least understood phenomena, the existence of superorganisms in the deep sea that challenge our very definition of individual life. In certain parts of the ocean, particularly hydrothermal vent communities, scientists have discovered what appear to be collections of different species functioning as a single integrated organism. These aren't mere symbiotic relationships, but complex systems where multiple species have evolved to become functionally interdependent, sharing circulatory systems and even genetic material. What baffles biologists is that these superorganisms don't fit into our taxonomic system. They're not colonies of a single species like coral, but assemblages of evolutionarily distinct creatures functioning as a unified whole. In some cases, these integrated communities span hundreds of square meters, with no clear boundaries between individuals, challenging our fundamental understanding of what constitutes a single living entity. More disturbing is evidence suggesting some of these superorganisms might possess distributed neural networks, essentially collective brain-like structures spread throughout the assemblage. This raises profound questions about consciousness and individuality. Could these integrated communities develop forms of awareness, different from, but perhaps comparable to what we recognize as consciousness? Some theoretical biologists propose that these deep-sea superorganisms might represent an entirely different evolutionary path, one where distinct species merge into collective entities, rather than competing as separate individuals. If true, this would suggest that life in the deep ocean has taken a fundamentally different evolutionary trajectory than life on land, developing forms of biological organization we're only beginning to recognize. The existence of these integrated multi-species entities forces us to reconsider our basic assumptions about life itself. Perhaps individual organisms, as we understand them, are just one possible configuration of living systems. Let's now examine one of the most persistent historical mysteries of the deep, the legendary death ship sightings reported by sailors across centuries and oceans. Since at least the 17th century, mariners have documented encounters with ghostly vessels that appear from and vanish into fog banks, often described as ancient in design and seemingly crewed by shadowy figures. Unlike the famous Flying Dutchman legend, which describes a specific cursed ship, these death ship sightings share consistent features across different time periods and cultures, suggesting they might represent a genuine phenomenon rather than mere folklore. What makes these accounts particularly credible is their appearance in official ship's logs and reports from multiple witnesses on the same vessel, often from respected naval officers with no history of superstition or fanciful reporting. Modern oceanographers suggest these sightings might be explained by complex mirage effects caused by temperature inversions over water, which can create detailed projections of distant ships. Yet this doesn't account for the consistent reports of these vessels moving against the wind, emitting light in darkness, or approaching to near collision distance before vanishing. Perhaps most interesting is that these sightings often precede unusual ocean conditions, sudden storms, rogue waves, or in some cases, previously uncharted hazards that the observing ship subsequently avoids. Some maritime historians propose these might represent a form of mass hallucination triggered by specific atmospheric conditions at sea, affecting multiple observers simultaneously. Others note the similarities between death ship descriptions and actual historic vessels, suggesting they might represent some form of temporal anomaly, essentially glimpses of ships from different time periods. Whether psychological, atmospheric, or something more mysterious, these persistent sightings across centuries represent another facet of the ocean's ability to produce experiences that defy conventional explanation. Let's plunge into one of the most scientifically puzzling deep-sea discoveries, the underwater rivers of hydrogen that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of chemistry. In 2016, researchers discovered flowing channels of pure hydrogen gas seeping from the seafloor near hydrothermal vents in the Atlantic Ocean, a phenomenon previously thought impossible in Earth's oceans. What baffles chemists is that hydrogen is highly reactive in water, readily forming bonds with oxygen, yet these hydrogen rivers maintain their molecular integrity while flowing through the ocean. Even more puzzling is the behavior of these hydrogen streams. They flow like rivers rather than rising as bubbles, suggesting they exist in some state between gas and liquid that current physics struggles to explain. Some researchers propose that extreme pressure at these depths creates a supercritical state where hydrogen exhibits properties of both liquids and gases simultaneously. Others suggest these hydrogen rivers might be protected by some currently unknown chemical process occurring at the boundary layer between the hydrogen and the surrounding seawater. What makes this discovery particularly significant is that hydrogen is a critical ingredient for life. These previously unknown hydrogen sources could support entire ecosystems we haven't yet discovered. Astrobiologists note that similar hydrogen flows might exist on ocean worlds, like Europa or Enceladus, making these deep-sea hydrogen rivers potentially important models for extraterrestrial life-supporting environments. The existence of these hydrogen channels challenges our fundamental understanding of deep ocean chemistry, suggesting that our knowledge of even basic physical processes at extreme depths remains incomplete. Once again, the deep ocean reveals phenomena that shouldn't be possible according to our current scientific understanding, reminding us how much we still have to learn about our own planet. Now let's explore one of the most persistent and unexplained deep-sea disturbances, the underwater explosions that have puzzled naval authorities for decades. Since the advent of underwater monitoring systems in the mid-20th century, hydrophones have regularly detected powerful explosive events emanating from the deep ocean, often in regions far from any human activity. These explosions, sometimes registering the equivalent of several tons of TNT, occur with no visible surface disturbance and leave no debris or other evidence of their cause. What puzzles oceanographers is that these events don't match the acoustic signatures of known phenomena like underwater landslides, volcanic eruptions, or military testing. Particularly baffling are the patterns some of these explosions follow, sequences of detonations that occur at precise intervals or in geometric arrangements across vast areas of the seafloor. Some marine geologists propose these might be caused by sudden releases of methane gas from frozen hydrate deposits, essentially natural gas explosions occurring deep underwater. Others suggest more exotic explanations, such as cavitation implosions caused by specific current patterns or electromagnetic discharges from little understood deep earth processes. Naval authorities have occasionally deployed investigative teams to explosion sites, only to find no physical evidence of disturbance, as if the seafloor itself had briefly become explosive without leaving a trace. Perhaps most disturbing are accounts from submarine crews, who report feeling shockwaves from these events, sometimes powerful enough to temporarily disorient sensitive navigation equipment. Whatever their cause, these phantom detonations represent another aspect of deep ocean behavior that continues to defy scientific explanation, occurring regularly in our ocean depths without revealing their origins. Let's surface briefly to examine one of the most visually striking ocean mysteries: the sudden appearance of spiral patterns on the ocean surface that can span miles in diameter. These perfect spirals, first photographed from space in the 1960s, appear as if a giant had drawn a mathematical curve across the water's surface, with precision that seems impossible in the chaotic ocean environment. What baffles oceanographers is not just their perfect geometric form, but their persistence. These patterns can remain visible for days despite winds and currents that should quickly disrupt such formations. Recent research suggests these might be formed by interactions between internal waves, massive underwater wave structures that move between layers of different density water, rather than on the surface. Yet this explanation doesn't account for the perfect mathematical nature of many of these spirals, which often exhibit the exact proportions of golden ratio geometry, or perfect Fibonacci sequences. Some fluid dynamics specialists propose these might represent glimpses of underlying order in seemingly chaotic systems, visual evidence of the ocean's hidden mathematical nature briefly revealing itself. Indigenous Pacific Island navigators have known about these spiral patterns for thousands of years, using them as indicators of specific current conditions and incorporating them into navigation charts made of shells and sticks. Modern satellite observations have revealed that these spirals often appear in the same locations repeatedly over years or decades, suggesting they're tied to fixed geographic features on the seafloor. Whether they represent natural fluid dynamics or something more mysterious, these massive ocean spirals remind us that the sea sometimes organizes itself according to mathematical principles we're only beginning to comprehend. Now let's dive into one of the most persistent behavioral mysteries of the deep, the underwater meeting grounds, where different marine species gather in apparent non-predatory interactions. Marine biologists have documented locations in the deep ocean where multiple species, often natural predators and prey, congregate in what appears to be temporary truces or information exchanges. Unlike cleaning stations, where the benefit to both species is clear, these gathering spots serve no obvious ecological function, yet they've been observed consistently across decades of deep-sea exploration. Particularly baffling are sites where intelligent species like dolphins, certain sharks, and octopuses gather in close proximity without hunting behaviors, sometimes appearing to directly interact across species boundaries. Some researchers have proposed these might be locations with unique geomagnetic properties that attract multiple species for navigation purposes, essentially serving as underwater landmarks. Others suggest they could represent ancient meeting grounds encoded in genetic memory, perhaps dating back to times when these now different species shared common ancestors. More controversial theories propose these might be examples of interspecies communication, locations where different marine creatures exchange information about food sources, predator movements, or environmental changes. What makes these gathering spots particularly mysterious is their temporary nature. They form and dissolve with apparent spontaneity, yet occur in the same locations repeatedly over time. The existence of these cross-species meeting grounds challenges our understanding of marine ecology, suggesting levels of behavioral complexity and possibly communication that science has not yet fully acknowledged. Perhaps the ocean's inhabitants have developed social systems and interactions that transcend species boundaries in ways our land-based perspectives have prevented us from recognizing. Let's now explore one of the most unsettling acoustic phenomena of the deep, the unexplained singer that has been broadcasting the same pattern for decades. Since 1991, hydrophones in the Pacific have been picking up a distinctive series of sounds that repeat in exactly the same pattern every 3 minutes and 20 seconds, continuing uninterrupted for over 30 years. Unlike biological sounds which show variation between repetitions, this signal maintains perfect consistency in timing and frequency, suggesting an artificial rather than natural origin. What puzzles acoustics experts is that the sound doesn't match any known human technology. It's not a submarine communication system, scientific equipment, or known military device. Even more baffling is its location. Triangulation places the source in one of the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the Pacific, an area no human technology could survive for decades without maintenance. Some oceanographers have proposed it might be an abandoned Soviet-era underwater monitoring device, continuing to function long after being forgotten. Others suggest it could be some natural phenomenon we don't understand, perhaps a uniquely stable underwater gas vent creating consistent acoustic patterns. More exotic theories propose it might be evidence of non-human technology, whether from an undiscovered advanced marine species or something even more extraordinary. What makes this particularly eerie is that the pattern contains mathematical relationships that suggest encoding of information rather than random noise, prime number intervals, and Fibonacci sequence timing. Whether abandoned technology, unknown natural phenomenon, or something more mysterious, this persistent singer continues its broadcast from the deep, a voice from the abyss that has outlasted multiple generations of the scientists who first detected it. Now let's examine one of the most puzzling biological mysteries of the deep, the underwater light organs that operate outside the known laws of bioluminescence. While many deep-sea creatures produce light through chemical reactions, researchers have discovered species with light-producing organs that appear to function more like technological devices than biological structures. What baffles marine biologists is that these light organs can switch on and off instantly with no warm-up period, adjust brightness in precise increments, and even change color across the spectrum, abilities that should be impossible for chemical bioluminescence. Particularly mysterious are the light organs of certain deep-sea squid species, which can produce coherent focused beams similar to lasers, a feat no other known biological system can achieve. Some researchers propose these might represent convergent evolution toward technology-like solutions, essentially biological systems that have evolved to mimic what we would consider technological approaches. Others suggest these light organs might utilize quantum effects at the molecular level, accessing physical properties that human technology has only recently begun to explore. Even more puzzling is the discovery that some of these light organs continue to function even after the death of the organism, sometimes maintaining their light-producing ability for days after other tissues have ceased activity. This apparent violation of biological principles has led some theoretical biologists to propose that these might not be fully biological systems at all, but rather something that exists at the boundary between life and non-life. Whether representing advanced biological evolution or something more exotic, these anomalous light organs challenge our understanding of the dividing line between biological and technological systems. Perhaps in the extreme environment of the deep ocean, life has evolved solutions that blur the boundaries between what we consider natural and artificial. Let's dive into one of the most recently discovered and least understood deep-sea phenomena, the underwater dead zones that appear and disappear without explanation. These areas, spanning sometimes hundreds of square miles, suddenly become completely devoid of all life, not just fish and larger organisms, but even bacteria and viruses, creating perfect biological voids in the middle of otherwise thriving ecosystems. What baffles marine biologists is that these dead zones leave no evidence of what killed the organisms, no chemical residues, radiation, or other detectable cause for the complete sterilization of these areas. Even more puzzling is their temporary nature. After remaining lifeless for weeks or months, these areas suddenly return to normal, with organisms recolonizing the space as if nothing had happened. Some oceanographers propose these might be caused by currently unknown chemical processes releasing sterilizing compounds that quickly break down, leaving no trace of their presence. Others suggest they could be evidence of massive but brief radiation events, perhaps caused by interactions between cosmic rays and specific mineral compositions on the seafloor. More controversial theories propose these might be evidence of testing of advanced weapon systems or other human technologies that various governments refuse to acknowledge. What makes these zones particularly disturbing is their increasing frequency. Historical data suggests they were rare before the 1970s, but have been occurring with growing regularity in recent decades. Whether natural phenomena or the result of human activity, these temporary sterile zones represent another mysterious aspect of the deep ocean that science has yet to explain. The ability of areas of the ocean to become completely lifeless and then return to normal challenges our understanding of marine ecosystems and the factors that control life in the deep. Now let's explore one of the most persistent legends that might have a basis in fact, the accounts of giant sea serpents that have been reported by credible witnesses for centuries. Unlike many cryptids, sea serpent sightings often come from experienced sailors, naval officers, and marine scientists, individuals specifically trained to accurately observe and report what they see at sea. What makes these accounts particularly compelling is their consistency across time and geography. Descriptions from 18th century ship captains match those from modern ocean researchers, despite having no way to influence each other's observations. The creatures are typically described as 50-100 feet long, with serpentine bodies, vertical undulation, unlike the horizontal movement of whales, and often distinctive head features that match no known marine species. Marine biologists note that the deep ocean could theoretically support such creatures. The abyssal environment has enough biomass and suitable conditions for very large predators that rarely surface. Some researchers propose these sightings might represent glimpses of oarfish or other known deep-sea species that occasionally rise to shallow waters, though this doesn't account for the reported size and behaviors. Others suggest they could be surviving populations of prehistoric marine reptiles, like plesiosaurs, somehow persisting in deep ocean refugia, despite presumed extinction millions of years ago. Perhaps most compelling are the multiple cases, involving groups of witnesses and photographic evidence, though the latter is often too unclear for definitive identification. Whether representing unknown species, misidentifications of known creatures, or something else entirely, the persistence of these sightings across centuries suggests they might represent genuine encounters with something unusual in our oceans. The vastness of the deep sea provides ample hiding places for creatures that might prefer to avoid human detection, occasionally rising to the surface only to descend again into their lightless realm. Let's now dive into one of the most mathematically perplexing ocean mysteries, the perfect hexagonal patterns discovered on the deep sea floor that defy natural explanation. In certain areas of the Atlantic seafloor, researchers have discovered vast fields of perfect hexagons etched into the sediment, each measuring exactly the same size and oriented to precisely the same angle. What baffles geologists is that these patterns maintain perfect mathematical consistency across thousands of individual cells, a precision that known natural processes shouldn't be able to achieve. Even more puzzling is that these hexagonal fields appear in areas with no volcanic or seismic activity that might explain their formation through known geological processes. Some marine geologists propose these might be formed through some currently unknown interaction between electric currents in the Earth's crust and the iron-rich sediments of the seafloor. Others suggest they could represent evidence of crystallization processes occurring in the sediment itself, though this doesn't explain the large scale and perfect regularity of the patterns. More controversial theories propose these might be artificial structures of either human or non-human origin, though the depth and age of some formations make human involvement unlikely. What makes these hexagonal fields particularly mysterious is their resemblance to biological structures, like honeycomb, despite occurring in non-biological materials at scales far larger than any known organism could produce. Whether representing an unknown natural process or something more extraordinary, these perfect geometric patterns remind us that the deep ocean floor contains mysteries that don't fit neatly into our current scientific understanding. The seafloor, which we often think of as a featureless plain of mud and sand, occasionally reveals order and structure that suggest processes at work beyond our current knowledge. Let's now explore one of the most persistent navigational mysteries of the deep, the underwater vortices that seem to defy the laws of fluid dynamics. In certain areas of the ocean, particularly the North Atlantic and parts of the Indian Ocean, researchers have documented spinning water columns that maintain their rotation for months or even years without dissipating. What puzzles oceanographers is that these vortices violate our understanding of entropy. They should gradually slow and disperse their energy, yet some have been observed maintaining constant rotation for over a decade. Even more baffling is their behavior. When encountering obstacles, unlike normal currents that would be disrupted, these vortices appear to redirect themselves around obstructions before resuming their original path. Some fluid dynamics specialists propose these might represent self-reinforcing systems, where the initial rotation creates conditions that continually feed energy back into the vortex, though the mechanics of this remain unexplained. Others suggest they could be driven by currently unknown interactions between Earth's magnetic field and the electrical conductivity of seawater, essentially creating naturally occurring electric motors. Naval records contain numerous accounts of ships being trapped in these vortices, unable to make headway against their current despite full engine power. Modern vessels sometimes report the same phenomenon. What makes these permanent whirlpools particularly significant is their potential role in ocean mixing and climate regulation. They may be moving heat and nutrients through the ocean in ways our climate models don't account for. Whether representing a currently unexplained fluid dynamics process or something more exotic, these persistent vortices challenge our understanding of how water should behave over long time periods. The ocean sometimes moves according to patterns that our physics can observe, but not yet fully explain, creating structures that seem to violate the very laws we thought governed them. Now let's delve into one of the most recently discovered and least understood biological mysteries, the underwater communication networks that appear to connect widely separated marine species. Marine biologists have documented instances where distress signals from one species trigger responses in completely unrelated species, thousands of miles away, far too distant for conventional communication methods. What baffles researchers is the speed of these responses. They occur too quickly to be explained by chemical dispersion through water or sound transmission, suggesting some currently unknown medium for information transfer. Particularly puzzling are coordinated behaviors between species that have no evolutionary relationship and have never been observed in direct contact with each other. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent a form of quantum entanglement at the biological level, essentially quantum communication between organisms that have previously interacted. Others suggest there could be currently undiscovered communication channels in the ocean, perhaps involving subtle electromagnetic fields or pressure waves below our current detection capabilities. What makes this phenomenon particularly significant is its potential implications for understanding mass behaviors like migrations and spawning events that sometimes involve thousands of species acting in apparent coordination. Indigenous maritime cultures have long maintained that the ocean itself is a living entity with its own communication system, an idea modern science has dismissed, but which these observations might partially vindicate. Whether representing unknown biological signaling methods or something more fundamental about the nature of information in living systems, these communication networks suggest levels of ocean interconnectedness that science is only beginning to recognize. Perhaps the most profound ocean mystery isn't any single phenomenon, but rather the possibility that the sea itself functions as a kind of unified system, a planetary-scale network linking disparate life forms in ways we haven't yet imagined. Let's explore one of the most mathematically perplexing aspects of the apparent golden ratio geometry that emerges in certain deep-sea ecosystems. In hydrothermal vent communities and some deep-sea coral formations, scientists have discovered that organisms arrange themselves in patterns that precisely match the golden ratio, the same mathematical proportion found in art, architecture, and certain natural formations on land. What puzzles biologists is that these geometric arrangements appear across multiple unrelated species, as if they're all following the same mathematical blueprint despite having no direct communication. Even more baffling is that these patterns appear to maximize energy efficiency and resource distribution, suggesting they represent optimal solutions discovered independently by multiple evolutionary paths. Some theoretical biologists propose that the golden ratio might represent a fundamental organizing principle in nature, a mathematical relationship that emerges whenever systems self-organize for efficiency. Others suggest these patterns might be responses to currently unknown physical forces operating at those depths, perhaps subtle gravitational or electromagnetic influences that guide growth patterns. What makes these observations particularly significant is that they suggest mathematics may be more fundamental to life than we've previously recognized. Not just a human tool for describing nature, but perhaps an underlying principle that shapes it. Indigenous knowledge systems from many cultures have long maintained that certain mathematical relationships are sacred and fundamental to the structure of reality. Ideas often dismissed as mystical, but which these observations partially support. Whether representing convergent evolution toward mathematical optima or evidence of deeper organizing principles in nature, these golden ratio patterns suggest the deep ocean may be organized according to mathematical laws we're only beginning to recognize. Perhaps mathematics isn't just something humans invented to describe the world, it may be something the world itself follows, from the surface to the deepest abyss. Now let's examine one of the most persistent historical mysteries of the deep, the underwater stone roads that have been discovered, connecting ancient coastal sites around the world. These submerged pathways, now 50, 30, 100 feet underwater, appear to be deliberately constructed routes with consistent width, bordering stones, and in some cases, regular spacing of support structures. What puzzles archaeologists is that these roads would have been constructed when sea levels were much lower, potentially dating them to over 10,000 years ago, far earlier than conventional history places the development of such infrastructure. Even more baffling is the similarity in construction techniques between underwater roads found in locations as diverse as India, Japan, Cuba, and the Mediterranean, suggesting either cultural contact or independent development of identical methods. Some marine archaeologists propose these might represent the remnants of coastal civilizations that developed earlier than our current historical models allow, only to be submerged as sea levels rose after the last ice age. Others suggest they could be natural formations that merely resemble roads, though this doesn't account for the consistent measurements and apparent design elements observed in many examples. What makes these underwater roads particularly significant is their implication for human prehistory. They suggest levels of organization, engineering, and possibly trade networks that existed thousands of years before we thought such developments possible. Indigenous oral histories for many coastal regions include accounts of ancient lands now covered by water, with specific references to constructed pathways that once connected island communities. Whether representing evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations or extraordinary natural formations that merely resemble human construction, these underwater roads challenge our understanding of both geological processes and human history. The rising seas that followed the last ice age may have covered not just land but evidence of human accomplishments that would rewrite our understanding of how civilization developed. Let's now plunge into one of the most recently discovered and least understood physical phenomena of the deep, the underwater anti-gravity spots that defy our understanding of physics. In certain locations on the seafloor, particularly near the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and parts of the Pacific Ring of Fire, researchers have documented small areas where objects appear to experience reduced gravitational effects. What baffles physicists is that these spots show measurable differences in how objects behave. Things sink more slowly, rest at angles that should be unstable, or in some cases appear to hover slightly above the seafloor. Even more puzzling is that these effects don't extend throughout the water column, but remain localized to specific areas ranging from a few inches to several yards in diameter. Some geophysicists propose these might be caused by localized magnetic anomalies interacting with the metallic content of seawater and sediment, creating electromagnetic effects that counteract normal gravitational forces. Others suggest they could represent areas where different physical constants apply due to currently unknown quantum effects related to the extreme pressure at those depths. What makes these anti-gravity spots particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of fundamental physics. They suggest that gravity itself might be variable under certain conditions we haven't yet fully mapped. Indigenous maritime traditions from multiple cultures include references to light water areas of the ocean where boats float higher and swimmers feel weightless, locations that were both sought after and sometimes feared. Whether representing localized electromagnetic phenomena or something more fundamental about the nature of gravity itself, these anomalous spots suggest that even our most basic physical laws might have exceptions in the extreme environment of the deep ocean. Perhaps the crushing pressures and unique electromagnetic properties of the deep sea create conditions where the rules that govern the rest of our world begin to waver, opening windows into aspects of physics we've yet to discover. Let's surface briefly to examine one of the most visually spectacular ocean mysteries, the underwater light wheels that appear without explanation in tropical seas. Unlike the bioluminescent wheels we discussed earlier, these phenomena involve actual light penetration from the surface, creating perfect circular patterns of illumination on the seafloor that can span hundreds of feet in diameter. What puzzles oceanographers is that these light wheels appear even on cloudy days, or at night, suggesting they're not simply sunlight being focused by wave action. They seem to generate or channel light through some unknown mechanism. Even more baffling is their perfect geometric precision, exact circles with evenly spaced spokes radiating from the center, maintaining their shape despite currents and wave action that should distort such patterns. Some marine optics specialists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented interactions between certain water densities and light, essentially creating natural fiber optic effects that channel and direct illumination. Others suggest they could represent evidence of unusual structures on the seafloor that somehow collect ambient light and redistribute it in these geometric patterns. What makes these light wheels particularly significant is their apparent intelligence. They sometimes appear to track with ships or respond to human activity, behaviors impossible to explain through passive optical phenomena. Historical accounts from both Pacific and Indian Ocean sailors describe these light wheels as navigational markers, appearing at consistent locations to guide vessels through otherwise dangerous waters. Whether representing unknown optical properties of seawater or something more extraordinary, these perfect circles of light remind us that the ocean sometimes channels and manipulates light in ways our physics struggles to explain. Even something as fundamental as how light behaves in water might have exceptions and special cases we haven't fully documented, creating spectacular displays that seem to defy natural explanation. Now let's explore one of the most persistent biological mysteries of the deep, the immortal jellyfish, that has upended our understanding of life and death in the ocean. Discovered in the Mediterranean, but now found throughout the world's oceans, Turritopsis dohrnii is the only known animal capable of reverting completely to its juvenile form after reaching sexual maturity. What baffles biologists is that this process isn't just regeneration, it's actual age reversal, allowing these jellies to reset their entire biological clock and potentially live forever, barring accident or predation. Even more puzzling is how this immortality evolved. What evolutionary pressure would select for actual immortality when nearly all other life forms accept death as an inevitable part of their cycle? Some evolutionary biologists propose this might represent an accidental development, a cellular defense mechanism that had the side effect of enabling complete age reversal. Others suggest it could be evidence of convergent evolution toward immortality, raising the disturbing possibility that other species might develop similar capabilities, potentially disrupting entire marine ecosystems. What makes the immortal jellyfish particularly significant is its rapid spread throughout the world's oceans over the past few decades, raising questions about whether its immortality gives it competitive advantages that might threaten other species. More profound are the philosophical implications. A creature that never naturally dies challenges our fundamental understanding of life cycles and the purpose of death in biological systems. Whether representing an evolutionary accident or a glimpse of life's potential future direction, the immortal jellyfish forces us to reconsider our assumptions about the inevitability of aging and mortality. Perhaps death itself isn't as fundamental to life as we've always believed. The deep ocean has produced at least one creature that has escaped a cycle we thought universal. Let's now delve into one of the most mathematically precise mysteries of the deep, the unexplained number sequence found encoded in whale vocalizations across multiple species and oceans. Marine biologists analyzing recordings of whale songs have discovered that certain elements appear in patterns that match prime number sequences, Fibonacci series, and even more complex mathematical progressions. What puzzles researchers is that these aren't simple patterns but complex mathematical relationships that appear consistently across geographically separated populations that have no contact with each other. Even more baffling is that these sequences have remained consistent over the decades we've been recording them, suggesting they're not random but serve some specific communicative or cognitive function. Some cetacean researchers propose these might represent a form of mathematical language, essentially whales communicating through pure numerical relationships rather than the object-based references humans use. Others suggest they could be navigational tools, using mathematical relationships to encode information about ocean geography that can be passed between generations. What makes these mathematical sequences particularly significant is their implication for non-human intelligence. They suggest levels of abstract thinking and communication we typically associate only with human cognition. Indigenous maritime cultures, particularly Polynesian and Inuit traditions, have long maintained that whales are mathematical beings, creatures that understand the ocean through numbers and patterns humans can barely perceive. Whether representing a sophisticated communication system or evidence of mathematical cognition beyond what we've acknowledged in non-human species, these numerical patterns in whale songs suggest forms of intelligence that operate on principles fundamentally different from our own. The ocean's largest mammals may not just be intelligent in ways similar to humans. They might possess forms of intelligence that operate on entirely different cognitive frameworks, based on mathematical relationships rather than symbolic language. Let's explore one of the most disturbing temporal mysteries of the deep pool: the underwater time anomalies reported by divers and submersible crews in certain ocean locations. In specific deep ocean sites, particularly near certain seamounts and ocean trenches, professionals have documented significant discrepancies between timepieces taken into these areas and reference clocks maintained at the surface. What baffles physicists is that these time differences don't match predictions based on relativity. They're far larger than can be explained by known effects of pressure, gravity, or velocity on time dilation. Even more puzzling are consistent reports of subjective time distortion. Experienced divers reporting what felt like minutes underwater, only to discover hours had passed, or vice versa, with their air supply consumption matching their subjective experience rather than objective time. Some theoretical physicists propose these might represent localized space-time anomalies, areas where the enormous pressure of the deep ocean somehow affects the fabric of space-time itself. Others suggest they could be caused by currently unknown interactions between the Earth's magnetic field and human perception of time, essentially creating perceptual rather than actual temporal shifts. What makes these time anomalies particularly significant is their consistency. They tend to occur in the same locations repeatedly, allowing for multiple documented cases from different crews and time periods. Indigenous maritime traditions from multiple cultures reference slow water and fast water areas of the ocean where time behaves differently, locations traditionally avoided by fishermen or specifically sought by shamanic practitioners. Whether representing actual localized temporal anomalies or strange effects on human perception, these time discrepancies suggest that our experience of time itself might not be as constant as we assume when in the extreme environment of the deep ocean. Perhaps the immense pressure, unusual electromagnetic properties, and isolation of the deep sea creates conditions where one of our most fundamental experiences, the steady flow of time, becomes malleable in ways science has yet to explain. Now let's examine one of the most persistently reported, yet least studied phenomena: the underwater structures that appear to change position between mapping expeditions. In certain areas of the deep ocean, particularly the Indian Ocean and Western Pacific, seafloor mapping has revealed anomalous structures that appear to be in different locations when the same area is mapped months or years later. What puzzles marine geologists is that these movements don't correspond with known tectonic activity, ocean currents, or sediment shifts that could explain structures seemingly walking across the seafloor. Even more baffling is that these mobile structures maintain their shape and orientation despite their movement, suggesting they're shifting as whole units rather than being redistributed by external forces. Some oceanographers propose these might represent previously undocumented types of marine organisms, colony creatures, so large and slow-moving that they appear as geological features rather than biological entities. Others suggest they could be evidence of unconsolidated seafloor structures, sliding along some currently unknown subsurface layer, perhaps a form of deep-sea landslide occurring in slow motion. What makes these moving structures particularly significant is the implication for seafloor mapping and underwater navigation. If portions of the seafloor can relocate themselves, nautical charts and underwater infrastructure planning become significantly more complicated. Indigenous traditions from islands in the Western Pacific include accounts of walking reefs and wandering sea mountains, features that change position over generations, feared and respected as semi-sentient aspects of the ocean itself. Whether representing unknown biological entities, strange geological processes, or something more extraordinary, these mobile structures challenge our assumption that the seafloor is a relatively stable environment, changing only through gradual geological processes. Perhaps parts of the deep ocean floor are more dynamic and fluid than we've recognized, with structures that migrate across the abyssal plain like enormous geological snails, moving too slowly for human observation to easily detect. Let's dive into one of the most recently discovered and least understood acoustic mysteries of the deep, the underwater sound barriers that appear to selectively block certain frequencies. In specific ocean locations, particularly around certain seamounts and along sections of mid-ocean ridges, researchers have documented what appear to be invisible walls that completely block sound waves of specific frequencies, while allowing others to pass unimpeded. What baffles acoustic specialists is that these barriers don't follow known principles of sound propagation in water. They affect only narrow frequency bands with surgical precision rather than the broad attenuation expected from physical obstacles. Even more puzzling is their spatial definition. These barriers have distinct boundaries, where sound transmission changes dramatically within distances of a few feet, creating sharply defined acoustic edges that shouldn't be possible in a fluid medium. Some oceanographers propose these might be caused by previously undocumented temperature or density gradients in the water, creating refraction patterns that precisely cancel certain frequencies. Others suggest they could represent some form of destructive interference created by the seafloor topology itself, essentially creating natural acoustic filtering systems. What makes these sound barriers particularly significant is their potential impact on marine life. They create acoustically isolated zones that might serve as communication sanctuaries for certain species or affect migration and feeding patterns in ways we don't yet understand. Naval researchers have noted that these acoustic anomalies can affect sonar systems in unpredictable ways, sometimes creating shadow zones where submarines or other vessels become effectively invisible to acoustic detection. Whether representing complex but natural acoustic phenomena or something more unusual, these sound barriers suggest that the underwater acoustic environment is far more structured and complex than we've previously recognized. The ocean may contain invisible architectural elements made of nothing but sound, acoustic structures, as real and significant to marine life as physical barriers would be to terrestrial creatures. Let's now explore one of the most philosophically challenging mysteries of the deep, the evidence of what appears to be collective consciousness in certain marine species. Marine biologists studying complex social marine animals like dolphins, certain octopus species, and some schooling fish have documented behaviors that suggest awareness and decision-making distributed across multiple individuals rather than located within each organism. What puzzles researchers is that these collective behaviors often emerge faster than communication between individuals should allow, suggesting some currently unknown mechanism for rapid information sharing. Even more baffling are instances where these collectives solve problems that individual members have never encountered, demonstrating innovative solutions that appear to emerge from the group itself rather than any single member. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent emergent consciousness, essentially a new level of awareness that exists only at the collective level, more than the sum of individual consciousness. Others suggest they could be evidence of quantum entanglement at the biological level, allowing instantaneous information sharing between members of a social group through mechanisms not yet understood by science. What makes these observations particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of consciousness itself. They suggest awareness might not be limited to individual brains, but could emerge at different scales and through different mechanisms. Indigenous maritime cultures worldwide have long maintained that certain sea creatures, particularly dolphins and whales, possess a shared mind or collective spirit that operates beyond individual animals, a concept Western science has traditionally dismissed. Whether representing sophisticated but conventional communication systems or evidence of consciousness operating at scales, and through mechanisms we don't yet recognize, these collective behaviors challenge our fundamental assumptions about the nature and location of awareness. Perhaps consciousness itself isn't limited to individual brains, but can emerge between organisms, creating collective minds that experience and interact with the world in ways fundamentally different from individual awareness. Now let's delve into one of the most persistent and widespread legends that might have a basis in truth, the accounts of underwater light phenomena witnessed by divers and submersible crews around the world. Unlike bioluminescence, which has known biological causes, these phenomena involve structured light displays that form recognizable patterns, perfect geometric shapes, sequences of flashes that suggest communication, or formations that move with apparent purpose. What puzzles marine researchers is that these light phenomena occur in deep waters, where photosynthesis is impossible, yet they don't match the known characteristics of any documented bioluminescent organism. Even more baffling is their apparent responsiveness. Numerous accounts describe these lights changing pattern or direction when approached, suggesting either intelligence or some form of reactive mechanism. Some oceanographers propose these might be caused by previously undocumented chemical reactions in certain seafloor sediments, creating luminescent displays triggered by current changes or other environmental factors. Others suggest they could represent a form of plasma generation unique to high-pressure deep-sea environments, essentially natural electrical discharges, similar to lightning but adapted to underwater conditions. What makes these light phenomena particularly significant is their historical persistence. Similar accounts appear in maritime records dating back centuries, with remarkably consistent descriptions, despite the observers having no contact with each other. Naval archives for multiple countries contain classified reports of underwater light phenomena, often associated with anomalous sonar readings and unexplained equipment malfunctions. Whether representing unknown natural phenomena or something more extraordinary, these structured light displays suggest that the deep ocean produces visual effects through mechanisms we have yet to understand or document. The abyss may have its own form of illumination, not the familiar sunlight of the surface world, but something stranger and more ephemeral, appearing according to rules we haven't yet decoded. Let's explore one of the most recently documented and least understood biological mysteries, the deep-sea creatures that appear to manipulate electrical fields as both defense and hunting mechanisms. Marine biologists have discovered species in the abyssal depths that can generate and precisely control electrical fields far more powerful and complex than those of known electroactive fish like electric eels. What baffles researchers is that these creatures can shape their electrical output into precisely defined fields with distinct boundaries, essentially creating three-dimensional electrical structures around themselves. Even more puzzling is evidence suggesting these electrical manipulations can affect the nervous systems of nearby organisms in highly specific ways, not just stunning prey, but apparently inducing particular behaviors or physiological responses. Some evolutionary biologists propose these might represent an entirely different evolutionary path for predation and defense, one based on electrical rather than physical or chemical interactions. Others suggest they could be evidence of cellular structures capable of quantum effects, essentially biological systems that can manipulate fundamental physical forces in ways our technology cannot yet replicate. What makes these electrical manipulators particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of biological evolution. They suggest life has developed ways to interact with and control fundamental physical forces we typically associate with technology rather than biology. Indigenous knowledge from coastal regions around the Pacific includes references to thunderfish and lightning swimmers, creatures that could affect humans and boats without physical contact, descriptions long dismissed as mythology. Whether representing highly evolved electrical adaptations or evidence of biological systems operating on principles we haven't yet discovered, these creatures challenge our understanding of the relationship between life and the physical forces that govern our world. Perhaps in the extreme environment of the deep, life has evolved capabilities that blur the line between biology and physics, developing organic technologies that can directly manipulate the fundamental forces of nature. Let's now dive into one of the most puzzling geological mysteries of the deep, the perfectly straight channels that run along the seafloor for hundreds of miles without deviation. Oceanographic surveys have discovered what appear to be perfectly engineered trenches, cutting across the abyssal plain, maintaining consistent width and depth with a precision that known natural processes shouldn't be able to achieve. What baffles marine geologists is that these channels often run perpendicular to tectonic boundaries and current flows, the two forces that typically shape seafloor features, suggesting they were formed by some other process entirely. Even more puzzling is their internal structure. Some contain regularly spaced formations along their length, almost like support structures or measurement markers, spaced with mathematical precision. Some geophysicists propose these might be formed by previously undocumented types of underwater current systems, perhaps deep, powerful flows that somehow maintain perfect linearity despite the Coriolis effect. Others suggest they could represent ancient tectonic features from earlier periods of Earth's development, preserved in the relatively stable deep ocean environment, while similar features on land have been eroded away. What makes these linear channels particularly significant is their resemblance to artificial constructions. They look more like canals or pipelines than any known natural formation, raising questions about their true origin. Indigenous maritime traditions, particularly from Polynesian and Micronesian cultures, include references to the paths of the gods, straight lines beneath the sea, that navigators could somehow sense and use for orientation across vast ocean distances. Whether representing unknown geological processes, evidence of ancient technological intervention, or something even more extraordinary, these straight-line features challenge our understanding of how seafloor topography forms and evolves. Perhaps the deep ocean floor has been shaped by forces or events we haven't yet discovered, leaving geometric scars that remain preserved in the darkness as evidence of processes beyond our current geological understanding. Now let's examine one of the most persistent historical mysteries of the deep, the underwater stone spheres, found in perfectly aligned arrangements off coastlines around the world. Unlike the isolated stone balls discussed earlier, these formations involve multiple spheres arranged in precise geometric patterns, straight lines, triangles, and even more complex formations that suggest deliberate placement. What puzzles archaeologists is that these arrangements occur at depths that would have been above water during the last ice age, suggesting they were created by ancient cultures over 10,000 years ago, far earlier than conventional history places such sophisticated constructions. Even more baffling is the mathematical precision involved. The distances between spheres often conform to specific numerical relationships, like the golden ratio, or precise astronomical measurements. Some marine archaeologists propose these might represent ancient astronomical observatories or calendrical systems, essentially stone computers designed to track celestial movements for agricultural or navigational purposes. Others suggest they could be evidence of sophisticated prehistoric understanding of Earth's energy systems, arrangements designed to interact with or measure the planet's magnetic or gravitational fields. What makes these stone sphere arrangements particularly significant is their global distribution. Similar formations have been found off coastlines in the Mediterranean, Caribbean, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, suggesting either cultural diffusion or independent development of identical practices. Indigenous oral histories from multiple coastal cultures include references to the counting stones or the measuring spheres, ancient markers said to have been placed by ancestral cultures to encode important knowledge. Whether representing evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations or extraordinary coincidences of natural formation, these geometric stone arrangements challenge our understanding of human technological development and ancient global connections. The rising seas that followed the last ice age may have covered not just land, but evidence of sophisticated mathematical and astronomical knowledge that predates our current historical timeline by thousands of years. Let's now explore one of the most scientifically challenging aspects of the deep, the underwater organisms that appear to manipulate gravity or mass as a biological function. Marine biologists have documented deep-sea creatures that can seemingly alter their effective mass, becoming functionally heavier or lighter in ways that can't be explained by conventional buoyancy adjustments. What puzzles researchers is that these abilities go beyond what gas bladders or lipid adjustments should allow. Some specimens have been observed effectively changing their mass by factors of 10 or more within seconds. Even more baffling is that these mass changes don't correspond with physical expansion or contraction. The creatures maintain the same volume and appearance, while dramatically altering how gravity affects them. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent previously undocumented cellular structures, capable of manipulating physical forces at the quantum level, essentially biological technology that can affect fundamental properties of matter. Others suggest they could be evidence of biological systems that have evolved to exploit aspects of physics we haven't yet discovered, perhaps principles that become apparent only under the extreme pressures of the deep ocean. What makes these gravity manipulators particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of both biology and physics. They suggest life might be capable of evolving ways to control forces we consider beyond biological influence. Indigenous maritime traditions, particularly from coastal Pacific cultures, include references to heavy light fish and floating stones, organisms that could seemingly defy normal properties of weight and mass. Whether representing sophisticated biological adaptations operating within known physics or evidence of life exploiting physical principles we haven't yet recognized, these creatures challenge our understanding of the relationship between biology and fundamental physical forces. Perhaps in the crushing pressures and extreme conditions of the deep ocean, life has evolved capabilities that seem magical or impossible from our surface-dwelling perspective, biological technologies millions of years ahead of our own scientific understanding. Let's dive into one of the most recently discovered and least understood communal mysteries of the deep, the underwater meeting grounds, where multiple unrelated species gather in apparent cooperative behaviors. Marine biologists have documented locations on the seafloor where dozens of different species, many natural predators and prey, congregate peacefully in what appears to be deliberate information exchange or resource sharing. What baffles researchers is that these gatherings include species with no known means of communication with each other, yet they appear to coordinate activities and maintain non-aggressive proximity that defies typical ecological relationships. Even more puzzling is the temporary nature of these gatherings. They form and dissolve according to schedules that don't correspond with known migration patterns, feeding cycles, or reproductive behaviors. Some marine ecologists propose these might represent complex mutualistic relationships that have evolved over millions of years, essentially creating temporary neutral zones where multiple species gain benefits from information or resource exchange. Others suggest they could be evidence of interspecies communication systems we haven't yet detected, perhaps chemical, electrical, or even acoustic languages that allow diverse marine life to coordinate behaviors. What makes these multi-species gatherings particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of marine ecology. They suggest levels of cooperation and communication across evolutionary boundaries that current ecological models don't account for. Indigenous maritime knowledge from multiple coastal cultures includes references to the talking places or councils of the sea, locations where different creatures gather to share knowledge, concepts long dismissed as mere folklore. Whether representing complex but conventional ecological relationships or evidence of interspecies communication and cooperation beyond what science has acknowledged, these gatherings suggest the ocean may contain social networks that transcend species boundaries. Perhaps beneath the competitive model of ecology, we've constructed lies another layer of cooperative relationships, a hidden social dimension to marine life that operates according to rules and connections we're only beginning to glimpse. Now let's examine one of the most unsettling temporal mysteries of the deep, the underwater artifacts that appear to predate human civilization or even human existence. In deep ocean sediments and rock formations that have remained undisturbed for millions of years, researchers have occasionally discovered objects that appear to be manufactured metal alloys, geometric shapes, and structures with signs of toolworking. What baffles archaeologists and geologists is that these objects are sometimes found embedded in rock strata dated to periods long before humans evolved, some allegedly in layers millions of years old. Even more puzzling is that many of these artifacts display characteristics of advanced manufacturing, precision machining, complex alloys, or designs suggesting technological rather than natural origin. Some researchers propose these might represent contamination of the geological record, modern objects somehow becoming embedded in ancient formations through previously unrecognized geological processes. Others suggest they could be evidence of non-human intelligences that existed on Earth in the distant past, civilizations that rose and fell long before humans appeared, leaving only scattered artifacts in the most protected environments. What makes these out-of-place artifacts particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of Earth's history. They suggest either our geological dating methods are fundamentally flawed or our planet has a far more complex history of intelligence than we've acknowledged. Indigenous creation myths from multiple cultures worldwide include references to earlier worlds and previous intelligent species that existed before humans, concepts typically dismissed as symbolic rather than literal. Whether representing contamination of the geological record, evidence of previously unknown chapters in Earth's history, or something even more extraordinary, these anomalous artifacts challenge our understanding of both geology and the timeline of intelligence on our planet. Perhaps the deep ocean, with its ability to preserve what would be destroyed in more dynamic environments, holds evidence of histories and civilizations that conventional science has yet to acknowledge or explain. Let's now dive into one of the most recently documented and least understood acoustic mysteries, the underwater sound phenomena that appear to violate the known laws of physics. Hydrophone arrays monitoring the deep ocean have recorded sound patterns that travel faster than sound should be able to move through water, arriving at different sensors in sequences that defy our understanding of acoustic propagation. What baffles acoustic specialists is that these sounds don't just travel too quickly. They sometimes appear to arrive at distant sensors before reaching closer ones, suggesting either equipment malfunction or some currently unknown property of sound in deep water. Even more puzzling are sounds that appear to maintain perfect fidelity over impossible distances, reaching hydrophones thousands of miles away with no degradation or distortion, despite what we know about sound attenuation in water. Some oceanographers propose these might be caused by previously undocumented properties of certain deep ocean layers, perhaps creating superconducting-like channels for acoustic energy under specific temperature and pressure conditions. Others suggest they could represent evidence of quantum acoustic effects, essentially sound operating according to quantum rather than classical physics, in certain extreme deep-sea environments. What makes these acoustic anomalies particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of basic physics. They suggest that even something as seemingly well understood as sound propagation might have exceptions or special cases we haven't documented. Naval researchers have noted that these acoustic anomalies could have significant implications for submarine detection and underwater communication, potentially allowing for signaling methods that bypass conventional limitations. Whether representing complex but natural acoustic phenomena or evidence of sound behaving according to principles beyond our current physics, these anomalies suggest that the extreme environment of the deep ocean might create conditions where even basic physical laws operate differently. Perhaps the crushing pressure, near-freezing temperatures, and unique chemical properties of the deep sea create a natural laboratory where physics itself behaves according to rules we have yet to fully discover or understand. Let's explore one of the most persistently reported yet scientifically challenging aspects of the underwater electromagnetic anomalies that defy conventional explanation. Researchers using sensitive magnetometers to map the ocean floor have discovered locations where Earth's magnetic field behaves in ways that violate our understanding of geomagnetism, areas where field strength fluctuates wildly or reverses polarity within distances of a few meters. What puzzles geophysicists is that these anomalies don't correspond with known sources of magnetic variation like mineral deposits, underwater volcanoes, or tectonic features that typically affect Earth's magnetic field. Even more baffling are reports of these anomalies appearing and disappearing over time, magnetic hotspots that remain stable for months before vanishing completely, only to reappear in slightly different locations. Some marine geologists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented interactions between seawater, deep ocean currents, and the conductive materials in certain seafloor formations, essentially creating natural electromagnetic generators. Others suggest they could be evidence of temporary quantum fluctuations becoming magnified by the unique conditions of the deep ocean, essentially creating macro-scale quantum effects that wouldn't be stable in other environments. What makes these magnetic anomalies particularly significant is their effect on both technology and marine life. They've been known to disable electronic equipment and appear to influence the behavior of magnetically sensitive species like sharks and certain migratory fish. Naval records contain numerous accounts of compass and navigation system failures in these regions, sometimes leading vessels significantly off course before conventional navigation could be restored. Whether representing complex but natural electromagnetic phenomena or evidence of physical processes beyond our current understanding, these magnetic anomalies suggest the deep ocean contains electromagnetic structures and behaviors that science has yet to fully explain. Perhaps beneath the surface of our oceans lies a complex electromagnetic landscape, invisible mountains and valleys of magnetic force that shape marine life and occasionally interfere with human technology in ways we're only beginning to detect. Now let's delve into one of the most philosophically challenging mysteries of the deep, the evidence of what appears to be non-human structures and technology on the ocean floor. Deep-sea exploration vehicles have occasionally documented formations that display characteristics difficult to explain through natural processes. Perfect geometric shapes, apparent tool marks, and arrangements suggesting deliberate construction. What baffles researchers is that these structures often appear in the most inaccessible parts of the ocean, at depths human technology couldn't have reached until very recently, ruling out known human origin. Even more puzzling is that some of these formations appear partially buried in sediment layers that would take thousands of years to accumulate, suggesting they've been in place far longer than modern human presence in those regions. Some marine archaeologists propose these might represent previously undocumented human activities, perhaps ancient civilizations with more advanced seafaring capabilities than we've recognized in the historical record. Others suggest they could be evidence of natural processes creating deceptively artificial-looking formations, perhaps through crystallization, pressure effects, or biological activity we don't fully understand. What makes these apparently artificial structures particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of Earth's history. They suggest either human technological capabilities far beyond what conventional history acknowledges, or the presence of non-human intelligence at some point in our planet's past. Indigenous maritime traditions from multiple cultures include references to the builders beneath or the people of the deep, being said to construct cities and machines on the ocean floor, concepts typically dismissed as mythology. Whether representing misidentified natural formations, evidence of forgotten human technologies, or something more extraordinary, these structures challenge our assumptions about both geological processes and the history of intelligence on Earth. Perhaps the deep ocean, with its ability to preserve what would be destroyed in more dynamic environments, holds evidence of histories and civilizations that conventional science has yet to acknowledge or explain. Let's surface briefly to examine one of the most widely witnessed, yet scientifically challenging surface phenomena, the massive ocean-spanning flash events that illuminate entire regions of the sea. Ship captains and aircraft pilots have documented instances where vast areas of ocean, sometimes spanning hundreds of square miles, suddenly illuminate for brief periods, creating the impression of the sea itself becoming luminous. What baffles oceanographers is that these events don't match known bioluminescent phenomena, which typically create much smaller displays and don't exhibit the simultaneous activation across vast areas observed in these flash events. Even more puzzling is that these illuminations often occur in deep ocean regions far from shore, where the concentrations of bioluminescent organisms typically responsible for ocean light displays should be much lower. Some marine biologists propose these might represent previously undocumented mass behaviors of certain bioluminescent species, perhaps synchronized displays triggered by specific environmental conditions or predator activities. Others suggest they could be evidence of poorly understood electromagnetic interactions between the upper atmosphere and the ocean surface, essentially creating natural light-generating plasma effects, similar to aurora, but occurring at sea level. What makes these flash events particularly significant is their historical persistence. Similar accounts appear in maritime records, dating back centuries, with remarkably consistent descriptions suggesting they represent a genuine but rare natural phenomenon. Naval intelligence archives reportedly contain multiple classified studies of these events, particularly regarding their potential impact on submarine detection and strategic operations in affected ocean regions. Whether representing unknown biological behaviors, atmospheric oceanic interactions, or something more exotic, these massive illumination events suggest the ocean sometimes produces visual displays through mechanisms we have yet to fully document or understand. Perhaps the boundary between sea and sky occasionally generates phenomena that blur the line between oceanography and atmospheric science, creating spectacular displays that remind us how much we still have to learn about our planet's most basic elements. Let's dive back into the depths to explore one of the most recently discovered and least understood biological mysteries, the deep-sea organisms that appear to manipulate time as a biological function. Marine biologists studying certain abyssal species have documented creatures that seem capable of accelerating or slowing their metabolic processes to extraordinary degrees, essentially experiencing time at rates dramatically different from surrounding organisms. What puzzles researchers is that these temporal alterations appear to be selective rather than systemic, affecting only certain biological processes while leaving others operating at normal rates, a feat that shouldn't be possible according to our understanding of biochemistry. Even more baffling is evidence suggesting these organisms can extend this temporal influence beyond their own bodies, creating time bubbles that affect nearby creatures and even non-living processes in their immediate vicinity. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent adaptations to the extreme energy limitations of the deep sea, essentially allowing organisms to enter states where they experience subjective time differently to conserve resources. Others suggest they could be evidence of biological systems that have evolved to exploit relativistic effects that become more pronounced under extreme pressure, essentially organic technologies that can manipulate space-time at the cellular level. What makes these temporal manipulators particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of both biology and physics. They suggest life might be capable of evolving ways to control aspects of reality we consider beyond biological influence. Indigenous maritime traditions from multiple cultures include references to dreamfish and forever creatures being said to exist outside normal time, concepts typically dismissed as symbolic rather than literal descriptions. Whether representing sophisticated biological adaptations operating within known physics or evidence of life exploiting physical principles we haven't yet recognized, these creatures challenge our understanding of the relationship between biology and what we consider fundamental constants of reality. Perhaps in the crushing pressures and extreme isolation of the deep ocean, life has evolved capabilities that seem impossible from our surface-dwelling perspective, biological technologies that can manipulate the very fabric of time itself. Now let's examine one of the most persistent navigational mysteries of the deep pool, the underwater current patterns that seem to violate our understanding of fluid dynamics. Oceanographers mapping deep ocean currents have discovered flow patterns that maintain perfect geometric shapes over vast distances, precise circles, spirals, and even more complex formations that shouldn't be stable in a fluid environment. What baffles fluid dynamics specialists is that these currents maintain their shape despite crossing regions with different temperatures, salinities, and depths, factors that should disrupt or alter their flow according to known hydrodynamic principles. Even more puzzling is their persistence. Some of these geometric current patterns have maintained the same precise shape and location for decades, defying the chaos and variability that should characterize fluid systems over long time periods. Some marine physicists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented interactions between Earth's magnetic field and the conductive properties of seawater, essentially creating electromagnetically stabilized flow patterns. Others suggest they could represent evidence of self-organizing systems operating at oceanic scales, essentially massive versions of the same principles that create hexagonal convection cells in laboratory fluids, but operating with different rules at oceanic scales. What makes these geometric currents particularly significant is their effect on marine life and climate. They create distinct ecological boundaries and transport heat in ways our climate models don't fully account for. Indigenous Pacific navigators have known about these persistent geometric current patterns for thousands of years, incorporating them into navigation charts and describing them as the highways of the ocean gods, knowledge that Western science is only beginning to rediscover. Whether representing complex but natural fluid dynamic phenomena or evidence of physical processes beyond our current understanding, these perfectly geometric currents suggest the ocean sometimes organizes itself according to principles we have yet to fully document or understand. Perhaps beneath the apparent chaos of ocean movement lies a deeper order, mathematical relationships and patterns that maintain themselves through mechanisms our current fluid dynamics cannot yet explain. Let's dive into one of the most recently documented and least understood physical mysteries of the deep, the underwater gravity vortices that appear to concentrate gravitational effects. Researchers using sensitive gravimeters to map the ocean floor have discovered locations where objects experience significantly stronger gravitational pull than surrounding areas, creating what amount to gravitational whirlpools on the seafloor. What puzzles physicists is that these gravity anomalies don't correspond with mass concentrations or other known sources of gravitational variation. They often appear in areas of uniform geology with no obvious cause for localized gravitational increases. Even more baffling is their spiral structure. Gravitational force appears to increase along spiral paths leading to central points, creating vortex-like patterns that shouldn't be possible according to our understanding of how gravity operates. Some geophysicists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented density variations in the Earth's mantle beneath these locations, creating complex gravitational effects that manifest as spirals due to the planet's rotation. Others suggest they could represent evidence of interactions between gravity and other fundamental forces that become apparent only under the extreme pressure conditions of the deep ocean. What makes these gravity vortices particularly significant is their effect on both geological processes and marine life. They appear to influence sediment deposition, mineral formation, and the behavior of certain deep-sea species that seem able to detect and respond to these anomalies. Submarines passing through these regions have reported unexpected depth changes and navigation difficulties, with vessels being pulled toward the center of these gravitational spirals unless active compensation is applied. Whether representing complex but natural gravitational phenomena or evidence of physical processes beyond our current understanding, these spiral gravity anomalies suggest that even our most fundamental force, gravity itself, might behave according to different rules in the extreme environment of the deep ocean. Let's now explore one of the most unsettling biological mysteries of the deep pool, the evidence of what appears to be collective intelligence emerging in certain marine ecosystems. Unlike individual intelligence or simple swarm behavior, researchers have documented what appears to be true emergent cognition, problem-solving abilities that exist only at the ecosystem level, not in any individual organism. What baffles biologists is that these collective behaviors demonstrate planning, memory, and learning, despite being distributed across hundreds or thousands of different species with no central nervous system connecting them. Even more puzzling is how information propagates through these systems. New behaviors can spread throughout entire deep-sea ecosystems within hours, far faster than physical communication between organisms should allow. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent a form of quantum entanglement at the biological level, essentially, quantum effects allowing instantaneous information sharing across macroscopic distances. Others suggest they could be evidence of chemical signaling networks, so sophisticated they amount to a form of distributed cognition, essentially turning entire ecosystems into vast, slow-thinking minds. What makes these collective intelligence phenomena particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of consciousness itself. They suggest awareness might not be limited to individual brains, but could emerge at ecosystem scales through mechanisms we're only beginning to recognize. Indigenous maritime traditions worldwide include references to the mind of the sea or the thinking ocean, concepts typically dismissed as anthropomorphism, but which these observations partially vindicate. Whether representing sophisticated but conventional ecological relationships or evidence of consciousness emerging at scales and through mechanisms beyond our current understanding, these phenomena challenge our fundamental assumptions about the nature and location of intelligence. Perhaps consciousness isn't limited to individual brains or even individual organisms. It might be an emergent property that can arise whenever sufficient complexity and connectivity exist, creating minds vastly different from our own that operate across entire ecosystems. Let's delve into one of the most recently documented and least understood geological mysteries of the deep, the underwater crystal formations that appear to grow, move, and reorganize themselves like living organisms. Unlike normal mineral crystals, which form through slow, predictable processes, these deep-sea formations appear to grow along mathematically precise patterns at rates far exceeding normal crystallization, sometimes visibly changing over the course of hours rather than centuries. What puzzles geologists is that these crystals often rearrange themselves into new configurations when environmental conditions change, behavior more characteristic of adaptive biological systems than inert minerals. Even more baffling is their apparent ability to communicate with each other. When one crystal structure changes form, others nearby often respond by changing in complementary ways, suggesting some form of information transfer between supposedly non-living formations. Some marine geologists propose these might represent a previously undocumented form of life, essentially living crystals that blur the boundary between biological and geological processes. Others suggest they could be evidence of normal crystals affected by unique electromagnetic or quantum effects specific to the extreme pressure environment of the deep ocean, creating behavior that mimics life without actually being alive. What makes these living crystals particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of life itself. They suggest the boundary between living and non-living systems might be more porous than we've recognized. Indigenous knowledge from multiple coastal cultures includes references to growing stones and living gems in the deep ocean, concepts typically dismissed as magical thinking, but which these observations partially support. whether representing an unknown form of life or non-living systems that exhibit lifelike properties through currently unknown physical processes. These formations challenge our fundamental definitions of what constitutes a living organism. Perhaps beneath the familiar categories of life we've constructed lies a spectrum of semi-living systems, entities that exist in the borderlands between biology and geology, displaying characteristics of both without fitting neatly into either category. Now let's examine one of the most persistent yet scientifically challenging aspects of the deep pool, the underwater consciousness zones, where human divers and submarine crews report profound alterations in perception and cognition. In specific deep ocean locations around the world, particularly near certain hydrothermal vent fields and seamounts, professional divers consistently report experiencing unusual mental states, heightened awareness, altered perception of time, and sometimes access to information they shouldn't logically possess. What puzzles neurologists is that these experiences share consistent features across different individuals and time periods, suggesting they represent responses to something present in the environment rather than mere hallucinations. Even more baffling is that these effects often extend to electronic equipment. Cameras malfunction in specific ways, recording devices capture unexplained data, and communication systems receive signals that cannot be traced to any known source. Some marine scientists propose these might be caused by currently unknown combinations of gases released from the seafloor in these regions, creating neurological effects similar to nitrogen narcosis, but with different and more complex manifestations. Others suggest they could be evidence of electromagnetic fields with specific frequencies that interact with human brain activity, essentially creating naturally occurring zones that alter consciousness through physical rather than chemical means. What makes these consciousness zones particularly significant is their historical persistence. Similar accounts appear in maritime records dating back centuries, with remarkably consistent descriptions of the same locations and effects. Indigenous maritime traditions worldwide include references to dream waters and spirit pools, locations in the sea where consciousness changes and hidden knowledge becomes accessible, concepts typically dismissed as superstition. Whether representing complex but natural neurological effects from environmental factors or evidence of phenomena beyond our current scientific understanding, these consciousness zones suggest the deep ocean contains locations that can profoundly affect human perception and cognition through mechanisms we have yet to fully explain. Perhaps the extreme conditions of certain deep-sea environments create natural laboratories where consciousness itself can be altered, providing glimpses into aspects of perception and awareness that remain inaccessible in our normal state. Let's now dive into one of the most scientifically perplexing phenomena, the underwater thermodynamic anomalies that appear to violate our understanding of heat transfer and energy conservation. Oceanographers studying deep-sea hydrothermal systems have discovered locations where temperature behaviors defy known physical laws, areas where heat flows from cold regions to hot ones, or where thermal energy appears to be created or destroyed rather than merely transferred. What baffles physicists is that these anomalies can't be explained by measurement error or known geothermal processes. They represent genuine violations of thermodynamic principles that should be impossible according to our current understanding of physics. Even more puzzling is that these thermodynamic violations appear stable and persistent. They maintain the same patterns for years or decades, suggesting they represent a reproducible phenomenon rather than random fluctuations or equipment malfunctions. Some theoretical physicists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented quantum effects that become significant at macroscopic scales under the extreme pressure conditions of the deep ocean. Others suggest they could represent evidence of natural thermal metamaterials, structures formed by mineral deposits that channel heat in ways that appear to violate thermodynamic laws when observed at certain scales. What makes these thermodynamic anomalies particularly significant is their potential implications for our understanding of fundamental physics. They suggest that even our most established physical laws might have exceptions or special cases in extreme environments. Naval researchers have reportedly studied these anomalies for their potential applications in submarine propulsion and stealth technology, recognizing that understanding these apparent violations could lead to revolutionary energy technologies. Whether representing complex but natural phenomena operating within currently unknown physical principles or evidence of genuinely new physics, these thermodynamic anomalies suggest the deep ocean creates conditions where even our most fundamental physical laws might operate differently. Perhaps in the crushing pressures and unique conditions of the deep sea, aspects of reality that remain hidden in our everyday environment become apparent, challenging our most basic assumptions about how the physical world operates. Let's explore one of the most recently documented and least understood communication mysteries, the evidence of what appears to be complex information exchange between widely separated deep-sea ecosystems. Marine biologists have discovered that behavioral changes, species migrations, and even evolutionary adaptations often occur simultaneously in deep-sea communities separated by thousands of miles, suggesting some form of information sharing that shouldn't be possible across such distances. What puzzles researchers is the speed of this apparent communication, new behaviors or adaptations appearing in widely separated locations within timeframes, too short for conventional explanation through ocean currents, species migration, or genetic spread. Even more baffling is the specificity of these synchronized changes. They often represent precise responses to localized environmental shifts that distant ecosystems shouldn't have any way of detecting. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent evidence of quantum entanglement operating at biological scales, essentially quantum effects allowing instantaneous communication between organisms that have previously interacted. Others suggest they could be evidence of currently unknown properties of seawater itself. Perhaps the ocean functions as a kind of information-carrying medium through mechanisms we haven't yet detected. What makes this apparent communication particularly significant is its implication for our understanding of both ecology and information theory. It suggests forms of connection and coordination across planetary scales that our current models don't account for. Indigenous maritime cultures worldwide have long maintained that the ocean itself is a conscious entity capable of communicating across vast distances, a concept Western science has dismissed, but which these observations partially support. Whether representing currently unknown but conventional communication mechanisms, or evidence of information transfer through principles beyond our current scientific understanding, these synchronized behaviors suggest the ocean may function as a planetary-scale information network. Perhaps beneath the apparent separation of distant ecosystems lies a deeper connection, channels of communication flowing through the sea itself, allowing life to coordinate and respond as a global system rather than as isolated communities. Now let's delve into one of the most persistent and widespread mysteries, the underwater archaeological sites that appear to predate all known human civilizations. Marine archaeologists have discovered submerged structures around the world that display sophisticated engineering, precise astronomical alignments, and construction techniques that shouldn't have been possible during the time periods conventional history assigns to human technological development. What puzzles researchers is that many of these sites now lie hundreds of feet underwater in locations that would have last been above sea level over 12,000 years ago, long before the development of the advanced societies that would have been necessary to create such structures. Even more baffling is the similarity in construction techniques and mathematical principles found in submerged sites separated by thousands of miles, suggesting either cultural connection or independent discovery of identical engineering solutions across prehistoric societies. Some archaeologists propose these might represent evidence of advanced maritime civilizations that developed earlier than our current historical models allow, only to be lost as sea levels rose dramatically at the end of the last ice age. Others suggest they could be evidence of natural formations that merely resemble artificial structures, though this explanation struggles to account for the mathematical precision and tool marks observed at many sites. What makes these submerged sites particularly significant is their implication for human history. They suggest sophisticated civilizations with advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering existed thousands of years earlier than conventional archaeology acknowledges. Indigenous oral histories from coastal cultures worldwide include accounts of advanced ancestral civilizations lost beneath the rising seas, narratives long dismissed as myth, but which these discoveries partially vindicate. Whether representing evidence of forgotten chapters in human development or extraordinary natural formations that merely resemble artificial structures, these underwater sites challenge our understanding of both human history and geological processes. Perhaps our conventional timeline of human civilization is fundamentally incomplete. The true story of our technological development may lie hidden beneath the waves, preserved in structures that testify to achievements far older than our history books recognize. Let's now explore one of the most recently discovered and least understood physical mysteries of the deep, the underwater electromagnetic structures that appear to organize themselves like technological devices. Oceanographers mapping electromagnetic fields in the deep ocean have discovered what appear to be organized networks of energy flowing through seawater and the seafloor patterns that resemble circuit boards or power distribution systems, rather than natural formations. What baffles geophysicists is that these electromagnetic networks maintain consistent patterns over time and respond to environmental changes in ways that suggest functional purpose, strengthening or weakening connections in response to nearby disturbances. Even more puzzling is their geometric precision. These energy flows often form perfect fractal patterns or follow mathematical progressions that suggest design rather than random natural processes. Some marine scientists propose these might be caused by interactions between seawater, mineral deposits, and Earth's magnetic field, essentially natural electromagnetic systems that self-organize into complex structures. Others suggest they could be evidence of biological influence, perhaps vast colonies of electroactive bacteria or other organisms creating these networks as a form of distributed metabolism or communication system. What makes these electromagnetic structures particularly significant is their resemblance to technology. They function in ways that mirror human-designed systems, despite existing in locations no human technology could have reached until very recently. Indigenous maritime traditions from multiple cultures include references to the lightning beneath the waves or the fire paths of the sea gods, concepts typically dismissed as mythology, but which these discoveries partially support. Whether representing complex but natural electromagnetic phenomena or evidence of organized systems beyond our current understanding, these structures suggest the deep ocean contains self-organizing energy networks that function like technological systems. Perhaps what we recognize as technology, organized energy flows serving functional purposes, isn't exclusively a human invention, but a pattern that can emerge naturally under certain conditions, blurring the line between what we consider natural and artificial. Let's dive into one of the most persistent historical mysteries of the deep, the underwater light sources that have guided sailors for centuries, despite having no apparent human origin. Maritime records from multiple cultures and time periods document reliable light phenomena at specific ocean locations that function effectively as lighthouses, consistent illumination that appears on clear nights and has guided vessels safely through dangerous waters for generations. What puzzles marine historians is that many of these light sources appear in remote ocean locations, far from shore, in waters too deep for any fixed structure, and have maintained consistent positions and characteristics across centuries of observation. Even more baffling is their reliability. Unlike bioluminescent phenomena, which tend to be unpredictable, these lights appear on regular schedules that often correlate with specific astronomical conditions or tidal patterns. Some oceanographers propose these might be caused by unique combinations of bioluminescent organisms and ocean currents, creating persistent light displays at specific locations due to underwater topography, channeling these organisms consistently. Others suggest they could be evidence of natural gas emissions from the seafloor that ignite through poorly understood electrochemical processes, essentially creating natural gas flames that appear at regular intervals. What makes these mysterious lighthouses particularly significant is their historical impact. They appear in nautical charts, dating back centuries, and have likely saved countless lives by guiding ships away from dangerous reefs and shoals. Indigenous navigation traditions, particularly from Polynesian and Micronesian cultures, include detailed knowledge of these light phenomena, information passed down through generations of navigators who relied on them for safe passage. Whether representing complex but natural bioluminescent phenomena or something more extraordinary, these persistent light sources suggest the ocean contains reliable navigational markers that function like technology, but arise from processes we have yet to fully explain. Perhaps the sea itself has provided its own navigation system, patterns of light emerging from natural processes that mimic human innovations but operate according to their own ancient rhythms. Now let's examine one of the most scientifically challenging aspects of the deep, the underwater zones, where fundamental physical constants appear to vary from their normal values. Physicists conducting precision measurements in certain deep ocean locations have discovered areas where fundamental constants like the gravitational constant, the speed of light, or electromagnetic properties appear to differ slightly but measurably from their established values. What baffles researchers is that these variations remain consistent over time. Within specific boundaries, they're not measurement errors, but genuine local alterations in what should be universal constants. Even more puzzling is that these constant shifting zones often have sharp, well-defined boundaries, crossing from normal physics to altered physics within the space of a few meters, a transition that shouldn't be possible according to our current understanding. Some theoretical physicists propose these might represent areas where extreme pressure creates conditions that reveal the underlying variability of constants we normally experience as fixed, essentially windows into the true nature of physical laws. Others suggest they could be evidence of interaction between our universe and others, points where the membrane between different physical realities becomes thin enough for properties to bleed through. What makes these physics-altering zones particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of fundamental reality. They suggest that even our most basic physical laws might be local phenomena rather than universal truths. Indigenous maritime traditions from multiple cultures include references to spirit waters or dream seas, locations where reality itself operates differently, concepts typically dismissed as supernatural, but which these observations partially support. Whether representing extreme but natural physical phenomena or evidence of more exotic possibilities, these zones where constants vary challenge our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of physical reality. Perhaps the laws of physics themselves aren't as immutable as we've believed. They might be more like local weather patterns than universal edicts, varying subtly across space, and perhaps even time in ways that become apparent only in extreme environments like the deep ocean. Let's explore one of the most persistently reported yet scientifically challenging phenomena, the underwater visual distortions that appear to bend space itself. Deep-sea explorers and submersible crews have documented locations where visual perception becomes profoundly altered. Straight lines appear curved, distances seem compressed or expanded, and objects viewed through these areas appear distorted in mathematically precise ways. What puzzles optical specialists is that these distortions can be captured on camera and measured precisely. They're not subjective illusions, but actual alterations in how light travels through these regions of water. Even more baffling is that these optical effects don't match known causes of underwater visual distortion, like temperature gradients or salinity changes. They create patterns that follow precise geometric progressions, with no apparent physical cause. Some marine physicists propose these might be caused by localized gravitational anomalies affecting spacetime itself, essentially creating natural gravitational lenses in the deep ocean. Others suggest they could be evidence of exotic matter with negative refractive indices, essentially natural metamaterials forming in certain deep-sea conditions that bend light in ways conventional materials cannot. What makes these space-bending zones particularly significant is their potential implication for our understanding of both optics and spacetime. They suggest natural conditions can create visual effects we've only recently been able to produce with advanced technology. Naval research programs have reportedly studied these phenomena extensively for potential applications in stealth technology, recognizing that understanding these natural cloaking effects could lead to revolutionary advances in invisibility systems. Whether representing complex but natural optical phenomena or evidence of more fundamental distortions in spacetime, these visual anomalies suggest the deep ocean contains conditions that can bend the very fabric of space in ways we're only beginning to understand. Perhaps in the extreme pressures of the deep, aspects of physics that normally remain theoretical become observable, natural laboratories, where light and space behave according to their true nature, rather than the approximations we experience in everyday environments. Now let's delve into one of the most persistently reported yet least understood perceptual mysteries, the underwater time anomalies experienced by deep-sea divers and submersible crews. Professional deep-sea workers consistently report experiencing significant time distortions in certain ocean locations, subjective experiences where minutes seem to stretch into hours, or hours compress into moments, often accompanied by unusual clarity of thought and perception. What puzzles researchers is that these temporal experiences often align across different individuals simultaneously, entire crews reporting identical time distortions, suggesting an external cause rather than individual psychological factors. Even more baffling is that these subjective experiences sometimes correlate with actual time discrepancies on precision chronometers, instruments showing measurable time dilation effects, far larger than can be explained by relativity at the velocities and gravitational fields involved. Some theoretical physicists propose these might be caused by interactions between intense pressure and human perception, essentially extreme conditions affecting how our brains process temporal information. Others suggest they could be evidence of actual localized time dilation, areas where space-time itself is affected by currently unknown properties of the deep ocean environment. What makes these time anomalies particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of consciousness and its relationship to physical reality. They suggest our perception of time might be more directly connected to fundamental physics than we've recognized. Indigenous maritime traditions from multiple cultures include references to timeless waters and the sea beyond time, locations where temporal experience changes dramatically, concepts typically dismissed as mystical, but which these reports partially vindicate. Whether representing neurological effects from extreme environmental conditions or evidence of actual physical anomalies in spacetime, these experiences suggest the deep ocean contains zones where our most fundamental experience, the passage of time, can be profoundly altered. Perhaps time itself flows differently in the crushing depths, not just our perception of it, but the actual fabric of duration changing under conditions we've barely begun to study or understand. Let's examine one of the most recently documented and least understood structural mysteries of the deep, the underwater architectural anomalies that appear designed to channel energy rather than water. Oceanographic surveys mapping the seafloor have discovered formations that appear to function as waveguides or resonant chambers, structures that capture, amplify, and direct various forms of energy in ways that suggest purposeful design rather than random natural formation. What baffles marine geologists is that these structures often incorporate materials with specific electromagnetic, acoustic, or thermal properties arranged in sequences that create functional energy manipulation systems. Even more puzzling is their apparent tuning. Many seem calibrated to specific frequencies or energy levels that correspond to natural oceanic processes, suggesting they were designed to interact with these particular phenomena. Some researchers propose these might be caused by self-organizing processes in mineral deposition, essentially natural systems that evolve toward energy-efficient formations through purely physical processes. Others suggest they could be evidence of biological influence, perhaps vast colonies of organisms creating these structures over thousands of years for purposes related to feeding, defense, or communication. What makes these energy-channeling structures particularly significant is their resemblance to technology. They function in ways that mirror human-designed antenna arrays, acoustic lenses, or waveguides, despite existing in locations human technology couldn't have reached. Indigenous maritime knowledge from multiple cultures includes references to singing stones in power places in the deep sea, locations where energy gathers and transforms, concepts typically dismissed as superstition. Whether representing complex but natural formations or evidence of designed systems beyond our current understanding, these structures suggest the deep ocean contains architectural elements that function like technology in their ability to manipulate energy. Perhaps what we recognize as technology, structures designed to channel and transform energy, isn't exclusively a human invention, but a pattern that can emerge through geological, biological, or other processes, creating functional systems that exist independent of human intervention. Let's now dive into one of the most persistent yet least understood biological mysteries, the evidence of regenerative properties in deep-sea water that seem to defy conventional biology. Marine biologists have documented instances where organisms exposed to water from certain deep ocean locations exhibit extraordinary healing abilities, regenerating damaged tissues at rates far exceeding their normal capabilities. What puzzles researchers is that these effects persist even when the water is removed from its original location and carefully controlled for temperature, pressure, and chemical composition, suggesting some property beyond conventional analysis. Even more baffling is that these regenerative effects sometimes transfer between completely unrelated species, healing properties that work across evolutionary boundaries in ways that shouldn't be possible, according to our understanding of cellular biology. Some biochemists propose these might be caused by currently unknown compounds produced by deep-sea organisms, natural pharmaceutical factories, creating molecules with regenerative properties beyond our current medical capabilities. Others suggest they could be evidence of unique structural properties in the water itself, perhaps specific molecular arrangements or quantum effects that emerge only under the extreme conditions of the deep ocean. What makes these healing waters particularly significant is their potential medical implications. They suggest the deep ocean may contain solutions to regenerative medicine challenges that have eluded our best scientific efforts. Indigenous maritime healing traditions from multiple cultures include references to the water of life from specific ocean locations, substances believed to accelerate healing and extend life, concepts typically dismissed as folklore. Whether representing complex but natural biochemical phenomena or evidence of properties beyond our current scientific understanding, these regenerative effects suggest the deep ocean may contain healing potential that modern medicine has yet to fully recognize or harness. Perhaps the extreme environments of the deep sea have driven the evolution of biochemical solutions far more sophisticated than our current medical science, natural technologies developed over millions of years that could revolutionize our approach to healing if we can unlock their secrets. Let's explore one of the most recently discovered and least understood geological mysteries, the underwater crystal structures that appear to store and process information like biological or technological systems. Researchers studying certain deep-sea mineral formations have discovered crystals with internal structures that resemble information storage systems, regular patterns that can exist in multiple stable states and appear to change in response to environmental stimuli. What puzzles materials scientists is that these formations exhibit behaviors associated with memory and processing. They learn from repeated exposures to specific conditions, adjusting their internal structure in ways that suggest information storage and retrieval. Even more baffling is evidence that these crystal systems can influence each other across distances, changes in one formation, apparently triggering complementary changes in others, without any obvious physical connection between them. Some theoretical physicists propose these might represent naturally occurring quantum computing systems, essentially crystal structures that leverage quantum effects for information processing in ways that parallel our most advanced technological efforts. Others suggest they could be evidence of a previously undocumented interface between geological and biological processes, perhaps living organisms influencing crystal growth to create external memory systems in the mineral environment itself. What makes these information processing crystals particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of both geology and computation. They suggest natural systems might independently evolve capabilities we associate exclusively with biological brains or engineered computers. Indigenous knowledge systems from multiple cultures include references to knowing stones and memory crystals, objects said to record and share information, concepts typically dismissed as magical thinking. Whether representing complex but natural mineral phenomena or evidence of information processing beyond our current scientific paradigms, these crystal structures suggest the deep ocean may contain computational systems that have emerged through entirely non-human processes. Perhaps computation itself, the ability to store, process, and transmit information, isn't unique to brains and computers, but a capability that can emerge spontaneously in sufficiently complex systems, including the mineral structures of the deep ocean. Now let's examine one of the most unsettling ecological mysteries of the deep, the underwater predator-prey relationships that appear to violate our understanding of evolutionary development. Marine biologists studying certain deep-sea ecosystems have discovered predator species with hunting adaptations so precisely matched to specific prey that they appear to have co-evolved simultaneously rather than through the gradual process of evolutionary adaptation. What puzzles evolutionary biologists is the perfect complementarity of these adaptations. Predators with attack mechanisms that exactly counter the defensive adaptations of their prey, as if both species had advanced knowledge of each other's evolutionary strategies. Even more baffling is the stability of these relationships. They maintain perfect evolutionary balance over millions of years, rather than engaging in the continuous arms race that characterizes most predator-prey dynamics. Some theoretical biologists propose these might be evidence of direct genetic information exchange between species, essentially predator and prey sharing genetic innovations, rather than evolving them independently. Others suggest they could represent evidence of convergent evolution operating with unprecedented precision, perhaps driven by currently unknown environmental factors specific to the deep ocean. What makes these synchronized evolutionary relationships particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of evolution itself. They suggest mechanisms of adaptation beyond the random mutation and natural selection framework that forms the cornerstone of current evolutionary theory. Indigenous ecological knowledge from multiple maritime cultures includes references to the agreement of hunters and hunted, a belief that certain species evolve through cooperation rather than competition, ideas typically dismissed as anthropomorphism. Whether representing complex but conventional evolutionary processes or evidence of biological mechanisms beyond our current understanding, these perfectly matched adaptations suggest evolution in the deep sea might operate according to principles we have yet to fully recognize. Perhaps beneath the competitive model of evolution we've constructed lies another layer of biological development, processes of coordination and information sharing that allow species to co-evolve in ways that maintain ecological balance rather than driving endless cycles of competitive adaptation. The ocean has always been humanity's greatest frontier, not just because of its vast unexplored expanse, but because of what lurks within its mysterious depths. For every secret we uncover, 10 more questions emerge from the darkness, an endless cascade of enigmas that challenge our understanding of reality itself. In this continuation of our journey into the abyss, we'll explore even more perplexing mysteries, phenomena so strange they make us question whether we truly understand the planet we call home. These aren't just stories to keep you awake at night. They're documented observations that have left scientists baffled, naval authorities concerned, and explorers forever changed by what they've encountered. So let's dive deeper into the darkness, beyond where conventional science can easily explain, to places where reality itself seems to shift and transform like the ever-changing surface of the sea. Let's begin with one of the most persistently reported yet scientifically controversial phenomena, the underwater archaeological sites that contain technologies that shouldn't exist according to our historical timeline. In locations ranging from the Mediterranean to the South Pacific, divers have discovered submerged artifacts embedded in ancient sediments that display manufacturing techniques or materials seemingly impossible for their time period. What puzzles archaeologists is that many of these objects show evidence of precision machining, standardized components, or metallurgical compositions that wouldn't be invented until thousands of years after they were apparently created. Even more baffling are artifacts containing elements or alloys that shouldn't exist naturally, materials with compositions so precise they suggest laboratory-level control over the manufacturing process in prehistoric times. Some researchers propose these might be evidence of advanced ancient civilizations whose technological achievements were lost in subsequent collapses, essentially suggesting human history isn't the steady march of progress we've assumed. Others suggest they could represent misidentified natural formations or contamination of the archaeological record, though these explanations become increasingly strained as more anomalous artifacts emerge from the depths. What makes these out-of-place technologies particularly significant is their global distribution, similar anomalous objects appearing in widely separated underwater locations with no known historical connection to each other. Naval and intelligence agencies reportedly maintain classified collections of such artifacts removed from academic study due to their potential implications for military technology or national security concerns. Whether representing evidence of forgotten chapters in human technological development or something more extraordinary, these submerged artifacts challenge the foundational assumptions of archaeology and human history. Perhaps the technological path we believe we've traveled for the first time is actually a rediscovery, knowledge once possessed, then lost to catastrophe, now being gradually pieced together again by modern science. Now let's explore one of the most recently documented and least understood meteorological mysteries, the underwater weather systems that appear to operate independently from surface conditions. Oceanographers mapping deep ocean currents have discovered what amount to complete weather systems operating in the deep sea, storm fronts, pressure systems, and cyclonic formations that mimic atmospheric weather but exist entirely underwater. What puzzles meteorologists is that these deep-sea weather patterns don't correlate with surface weather or known oceanic cycles. They appear to be self-contained systems operating according to their own independent rhythms. Even more baffling is their organization. These aren't chaotic fluid movements, but structured systems with recognizable features, like fronts, pressure centers, and circulation patterns, remarkably similar to atmospheric weather systems. Some marine physicists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented interactions between temperature, salinity, and pressure in the deep ocean, essentially creating conditions analogous to those that drive weather in our atmosphere. Others suggest they could be evidence of massive energy transfers we don't yet understand, perhaps geothermal, chemical, or even biological processes generating energy inputs large enough to organize water movements on oceanic scales. What makes these underwater weather systems particularly significant is their potential impact on marine life and climate. They may be driving migrations, nutrient distribution, and heat transfer in ways our current models completely miss. Climate researchers have begun investigating whether these deep-sea weather patterns might play crucial roles in long-term climate cycles, potentially explaining historical climate shifts that current models cannot fully account for. Whether representing complex but conventional hydrodynamic phenomena or evidence of oceanic systems beyond our current understanding, these underwater weather patterns suggest the deep ocean contains organized energy movements that mirror atmospheric processes. Perhaps what we consider unique to our atmosphere, organized weather systems with predictable structures and behaviors, is actually a fundamental pattern that emerges in any fluid system with sufficient energy inputs, whether air or water. Let's delve into one of the most persistent yet scientifically challenging biological mysteries, the evidence of what appears to be coordinated evolution across isolated deep-sea ecosystems. Marine biologists studying deep-sea vents and trenches separated by thousands of miles have discovered species developing identical adaptations simultaneously, despite having no genetic contact or environmental similarity that would explain such parallel evolution. What puzzles evolutionary biologists is the precision of these parallel adaptations, not just similar solutions to similar problems, but identical molecular mechanisms appearing simultaneously in genetically isolated populations. Even more baffling is the timing. These parallel evolutionary leaps often occur in synchronization across vast distances, as if responding to some shared signal despite the impossibility of any known communication between these separated ecosystems. Some theoretical biologists propose these might be evidence of convergent evolution, operating with unprecedented precision, essentially suggesting that when evolutionary pressures are sufficiently specific, they can produce identical results independently. Others suggest they could represent evidence of currently unknown mechanisms for genetic information transfer, perhaps through microbial intermediaries, viral vectors, or other means not yet recognized by evolutionary science. What makes this synchronized evolution particularly significant is its implication for evolutionary theory. It suggests mechanisms of adaptation beyond the isolated processes of mutation and selection that form the cornerstone of current understanding. Indigenous knowledge systems from multiple maritime cultures include concepts of the ocean as a unified living system where information flows through channels invisible to human perception, ideas typically dismissed as metaphorical, but which these observations partially support. Whether representing extreme cases of convergent evolution or evidence of biological communication beyond our current understanding, these synchronized adaptations suggest deep-sea evolution might operate through mechanisms we have yet to fully recognize. Perhaps beneath the apparent isolation of deep-sea ecosystems lies a deeper connection, channels of information, or influence that allow life to coordinate its evolutionary responses across vast oceanic distances. Now let's examine one of the most unsettling acoustic mysteries of the deep, the phenomenon researchers have termed chronoacoustic anomalies that seem to defy our understanding of time itself. Hydrophone arrays monitoring the deep ocean have recorded sound sequences that appear to run backward in time, acoustic events where the effect precedes the cause, creating patterns that should be temporally impossible. What baffles acoustic specialists is that these time-reversed sounds can be verified through multiple independent recording systems, ruling out equipment malfunction and suggesting the phenomena represent actual acoustic events occurring in the deep ocean. Even more puzzling is the structured nature of many of these recordings. They often contain complex patterns, suggesting communication or information transfer, rather than random acoustic anomalies. Some theoretical physicists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented properties of sound propagation under extreme pressure, perhaps creating conditions where acoustic waves can experience temporal reversal through mechanisms not possible in normal environments. Others suggest they could be evidence of localized time anomalies, regions where the normal flow of time becomes distorted through currently unknown interactions between gravity, pressure, and other physical forces. What makes these chronoacoustic anomalies particularly significant is their potential implication for our understanding of temporal physics. They suggest that time itself might not be the universal constant we've assumed it to be. Military research programs have reportedly conducted classified studies attempting to reproduce these effects under controlled conditions, recognizing their potential applications for both communication technology and more exotic temporal applications. Whether representing complex but conventional acoustic phenomena operating under extreme conditions or evidence of more fundamental anomalies in temporal physics, these backward-running sounds suggest the deep ocean creates environments where time itself may behave differently than expected. Perhaps in the crushing pressures of the deep fundamental aspects of reality, like the unidirectional flow of time, occasionally reveal exceptions to rules we've considered inviolable, creating acoustic windows into aspects of physics we've yet to understand. Let's explore one of the most recently documented and least understood electromagnetic mysteries, the underwater charge forests that generate and manipulate electricity in ways that defy conventional physics. Oceanographers mapping electromagnetic fields in the deep sea have discovered regions where complex, tree-like structures of electrical charge form spontaneously, branching patterns of electrical potential that maintain their organization, despite the conductivity of seawater that should quickly dissipate any such structures. What puzzles physicists is that these electrical formations maintain stability sometimes for days or weeks, a feat that should be impossible in the highly conductive environment of saltwater, where electrical charges typically equalize almost instantly. Even more baffling is their apparent self-organization. These aren't static fields, but dynamic systems that grow, change shape, and respond to disturbances in ways, suggesting some form of self-regulating process. Some marine geophysicists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented interactions between mineral deposits on the seafloor and the Earth's magnetic field, essentially creating natural electrical generators through geomagnetic induction. Others suggest they could be evidence of biological influence, perhaps vast colonies of electroactive bacteria or other organisms creating and maintaining these electrical structures as a form of energy harvesting or communication network. What makes these charge forests particularly significant is their potential role in deep-sea ecology. They appear to attract certain species while repelling others, suggesting they may function as a previously unrecognized factor in marine ecosystem organization. Research into these phenomena has yielded several promising technologies for sustainable energy generation, based on mimicking the apparent ability of these structures to harvest ambient electrical potential from seawater. Whether representing complex but natural electromagnetic phenomena or evidence of organized systems beyond our current understanding, these electrical formations suggest the deep ocean contains self-organizing energy systems that operate according to principles we have yet to fully document. Perhaps what we consider impossible, stable electrical structures in highly conductive environments, becomes possible under the extreme conditions of the deep sea through mechanisms that could revolutionize our understanding of electromagnetic physics. Now let's delve into one of the most persistent yet least understood temporal mysteries, the underwater locations where time itself appears to flow at different rates. Professional divers, submersible crews, and underwater research stations have documented time discrepancies while operating in certain deep-sea locations, confirmed cases where clocks run at measurably different rates compared to synchronized timepieces at the surface. What puzzles physicists is that these time dilations far exceed what relativity would predict, based on the velocities and gravitational differences involved, creating temporal variations hundreds or thousands of times greater than theoretical models allow. Even more baffling is the apparently local nature of these effects. They occur in specific, well-defined areas with sharp boundaries beyond which normal temporal flow resumes, creating what amount to time bubbles in the deep ocean. Some theoretical physicists propose these might be caused by interaction between extreme pressure and certain rare earth elements in the seafloor, perhaps creating conditions that amplify relativistic effects beyond their expected magnitude. Others suggest they could be evidence of what they term temporal thin spots, regions where the fabric of space-time itself becomes more malleable due to currently unknown properties of the deep ocean environment. What makes these time anomalies particularly significant is their potential implication for our understanding of physics. They suggest that time, which we consider a fundamental constant, might actually be variable under certain extreme conditions. Research vessels studying these phenomena often report that biological samples taken from these areas show unusual properties, cellular processes, that continue at altered rates, even after removal from the anomalous zones, suggesting the effect isn't just on measuring devices, but on biological processes themselves. Whether representing extreme but natural physical phenomena operating under the unique conditions of the deep ocean, or evidence of more fundamental anomalies in spacetime, these temporal variations challenge our most basic assumptions about reality. Perhaps time itself isn't the universal constant we've assumed. The extreme pressure, darkness, and isolation of the deep sea might create natural laboratories, where exceptions to our most fundamental physical laws become observable. Let's examine one of the most unsettling navigational mysteries of the deep, the underwater drift zones, where ships and submersibles are displaced across impossible distances without explanation. Naval records from multiple countries document incidents where vessels operating in certain deep water regions suddenly find themselves hundreds or even thousands of miles from their previous position, displacements that occur without crew awareness and in time frames that make conventional travel impossible. What puzzles maritime authorities is that these displacement events leave no evidence of the intervening journey. Fuel levels, engine wear, and onboard chronometers all indicate the vessels didn't actually travel through the intervening space in any conventional sense. Even more baffling is the selectivity of what gets transported. In some cases, only the vessel and crew are displaced while deployed equipment remains at the original location, suggesting these aren't simply navigational errors or equipment malfunctions. Some theoretical physicists propose these might represent naturally occurring wormholes or spatial anomalies, essentially temporary connections between distant points in space created through currently unknown properties of the deep ocean environment. Others suggest they could be evidence of interaction between human consciousness and spacetime under certain conditions, perhaps the extreme isolation and psychological pressure of deep-sea operations triggering latent human abilities to influence physical reality. What makes these drift zones particularly significant is their apparent consistency. They tend to occur in specific geographic locations and often transport vessels to specific destination areas rather than random positions, suggesting an organized rather than chaotic phenomenon. Military research programs have reportedly attempted to weaponize these phenomena for rapid deployment capabilities, though the unpredictability and lack of theoretical understanding has made such efforts largely unsuccessful. Whether representing complex but natural spatial phenomena or evidence of more exotic physics beyond our current understanding, these displacement events suggest the deep ocean contains conditions where space itself may become malleable or discontinuous. Perhaps beneath the seemingly continuous fabric of space lies another reality, one where distant points can connect directly under certain conditions, creating shortcuts through the ocean that bypass normal spatial relationships entirely. Now let's explore one of the most recently documented and least understood biological mysteries, the deep-sea organisms that appear to exist simultaneously in multiple locations. Marine biologists conducting population studies of certain abyssal species have discovered individual organisms that appear to exist in multiple places at once, creatures that can be observed and even physically sampled from locations thousands of miles apart. Yet DNA analysis confirms they are single individuals rather than identical clones. What puzzles researchers is that these bilocation capabilities don't match any known biological mechanism. They appear to represent actual physical presence in multiple locations rather than mimicry, holographic projection, or any other conventional explanation. Even more baffling is the apparent awareness these organisms maintain across their separated parts. Actions affecting one manifestation create immediate responses in others, despite distances that should make such coordination impossible. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent previously undocumented quantum effects operating at macroscopic scales, essentially biological quantum entanglement, allowing single organisms to maintain physical presence in multiple locations. Others suggest they could be evidence of spatial perception limitations in human observers. Perhaps these creatures exist in spatial dimensions we cannot fully perceive, making them appear discontinuous from our limited three-dimensional perspective. What makes these bilocating organisms particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of both biology and physics. They suggest life may be capable of evolving relationships with physical reality that transcend the limitations we consider fundamental. Research into these phenomena has already yielded several promising technologies in quantum computing and telecommunications, based on mimicking the apparent ability of these organisms to maintain quantum coherence at macroscopic scales and biological temperatures. Whether representing extreme but natural biological adaptations or evidence of living organisms that have evolved to exploit aspects of quantum reality, these bilocating creatures suggest the deep ocean contains life forms that interact with fundamental reality in ways we're only beginning to understand. Perhaps what we consider impossible, macroscopic quantum effects in living systems, becomes possible in the strange, isolated environment of the deep sea, where evolutionary pressures may have driven life to develop capabilities beyond what our current physics considers possible. Let's delve into one of the most persistent yet scientifically challenging cultural mysteries: the underwater archaeological sites that contain identical artifacts and structures, despite being separated by entire oceans. Marine archaeologists have discovered submerged ruins in locations as diverse as the Mediterranean, Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific that contain structures with identical dimensions, materials, and construction techniques. Similarities so precise they suggest direct cultural contact despite being created by civilizations conventionally believed to have had no interaction. What puzzles researchers is that many of these sites were submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, around 10,000–12,000 years ago, thousands of years before humans were supposedly capable of transoceanic travel that could explain such cultural connections. Even more baffling is the mathematical knowledge encoded in these structures. They often incorporate advanced geometric principles, astronomical alignments, and measurement systems that appear identical across sites separated by thousands of miles. Some archaeologists propose these might be evidence of a global maritime civilization that existed before the end of the last ice age, a worldwide culture with advanced seafaring capabilities that connected distant regions long before conventional history acknowledges such connections were possible. Others suggest they could represent independent development of identical solutions, essentially proposing that when human minds approach similar problems with similar materials, they might develop identical answers without direct contact. What makes these architectural parallels particularly significant is their implication for human history. They suggest global cultural connections and knowledge sharing at a time when conventional archaeology considers human populations to have been isolated from each other. Indigenous oral histories from coastal cultures around the world include accounts of ancient seafaring ancestors who maintained global trade networks, narratives long dismissed as legend, but which these underwater discoveries partially vindicate. Whether representing evidence of forgotten chapters in human history or extraordinary coincidences of independent development, these parallel structures challenge our understanding of prehistoric human capabilities and connections. Perhaps human history isn't the series of isolated developments and recent connections we've assumed. The rising seas that followed the last ice age may have covered not just land but evidence of a globally connected human culture that existed long before our conventional timeline suggests such connections were possible. Now let's examine one of the most unsettling perceptual mysteries of the deep, the underwater zones where human consciousness itself appears to expand beyond its normal boundaries. Professional divers, submersible crews, and underwater researchers working in certain deep ocean locations consistently report experiencing radical expansions of consciousness, not just altered states, but specific enhancements of perception, cognition, and awareness that have been independently verified through controlled testing. What puzzles neurologists is that these cognitive enhancements include capabilities normally considered impossible: accurate perception of distant events, access to information with no conventional sensory source, and in some cases, apparent awareness of future occurrences. Even more baffling is the consistency of these experiences across different individuals. People with no prior knowledge of the phenomena report identical expansions of consciousness when entering these zones, suggesting they represent responses to something present in the environment rather than psychological expectation. Some marine scientists propose these might be caused by currently unknown compounds released by deep-sea organisms, natural neurochemicals that temporarily alter human brain function in specific ways that enhance certain cognitive capabilities. Others suggest they could be evidence of quantum effects on consciousness, perhaps the unique conditions of pressure, electromagnetic fields, and isolation creating environments where quantum coherence in neural systems becomes enhanced or extended. What makes these consciousness-expanding zones particularly significant is their potential implication for our understanding of human potential. They suggest our normal cognitive limitations might be more situational than absolute. Military and intelligence agencies have reportedly maintained classified research programs investigating these phenomena for decades, particularly focused on their potential applications for remote sensing and information gathering. Whether representing the effects of natural compounds on human neurology or evidence of consciousness capabilities beyond our current scientific understanding, these zones suggest the deep ocean contains environments that can fundamentally alter the boundaries of human awareness. Perhaps what we consider the limits of human perception and cognition are merely the boundaries that evolve for terrestrial survival. In the alien environment of the deep ocean, our consciousness may be freed from constraints that normally limit its capabilities, revealing potential that remains hidden in our everyday experience. Let's explore one of the most recently documented and least understood physical mysteries, the underwater phase transition zones, where matter appears to shift between different states in ways that defy conventional physics. Oceanographers studying certain deep-sea locations have discovered regions where materials spontaneously change their physical state, solid objects, becoming temporarily fluid, liquids exhibiting properties of gases, or substances shifting between states without corresponding temperature changes that should accompany such transitions. What puzzles physicists is that these phase transitions occur without the energy inputs or outputs that should accompany such changes. Solids liquefy without absorbing heat. Liquids solidify without releasing energy, creating what appear to be violations of thermodynamic laws. Even more baffling is the temporary nature of these transitions. Materials return to their original state upon removal from these zones, suggesting the effect is environmental rather than a fundamental change in the substances themselves. Some theoretical physicists propose these might be caused by previously undocumented interactions between extreme pressure and certain quantum properties of matter, essentially creating conditions where wave-particle duality becomes amplified to macroscopic scales. Others suggest they could be evidence of localized alterations in fundamental physical constants, regions, where the basic rules governing atomic and molecular behavior temporarily shift to slightly different values. What makes these phase transition zones particularly significant is their potential implications for materials, science, and engineering. They suggest possibilities for manipulating matter in ways currently considered impossible, potentially enabling revolutionary new manufacturing techniques. Research vessels studying these phenomena often report that previously unknown alloys and composite materials sometimes form spontaneously in these zones, combinations of elements that cannot be created in conventional laboratories because they violate standard chemical bonding rules. Whether representing extreme but natural physical phenomena operating under the unique conditions of the deep ocean, or evidence of more fundamental variations in physical laws, these phase transitions challenge our understanding of matter itself. Perhaps the states of matter we consider fundamental, solid, liquid, gas, plasma, represent just a subset of possible configurations that become accessible only under the extreme conditions found in certain deep-sea environments. Now let's delve into one of the most persistent yet scientifically challenging biological mysteries, the evidence of what appears to be silicon-based life evolving alongside carbon-based organisms in the deep ocean. Marine biologists studying certain deep-sea ecosystems have discovered organisms that incorporate silicon into their fundamental biochemistry, not just as structural elements like conventional shells or skeletons, but as apparent analogs to carbon in their metabolic processes. What puzzles researchers is that silicon-based biochemistry has long been considered theoretically possible, but practically unlikely due to silicon's chemical properties. Yet these organisms appear to have overcome limitations that chemistry suggests should be insurmountable. Even more baffling is evidence suggesting these silicon-incorporating organisms may represent an entirely separate origin of life. Genetic analysis shows fundamental differences in their molecular organization, suggesting they evolved independently from all other life on Earth. Some theoretical biologists propose these might be evidence of multiple genesis events on our planet, essentially suggesting that life may have started more than once on Earth, creating separate evolutionary trees with fundamentally different biochemical foundations. Others suggest they could represent extreme adaptation of conventional carbon-based life, perhaps organisms that gradually incorporated more silicon into their biology as they adapted to specific deep-sea environments over millions of years. What makes these silicon-incorporating organisms particularly significant is their implication for astrobiology. They dramatically expand the range of conditions where we might expect to find life on other worlds, suggesting biology may be more flexible in its fundamental chemistry than previously thought. Research into these organisms has already yielded several promising technologies in semiconductor design and computing, based on biological models of silicon manipulation that achieve efficiencies far beyond our current engineering capabilities. Whether representing a separate origin of life on Earth or extreme adaptation of conventional biology, these silicon-incorporating organisms suggest life may be far more versatile in its fundamental chemistry than our carbon-centric models have acknowledged. Perhaps life itself isn't limited to the carbon-based biochemistry we've considered essential. It might be a more fundamental property that can emerge through multiple chemical pathways, creating parallel biological systems based on different elemental foundations. Let's examine one of the most unsettling ecological mysteries of the deep, the underwater ecosystems that appear to function as single organisms rather than collections of separate species. Marine biologists studying certain deep-sea communities have discovered ecosystems where dozens or hundreds of apparently distinct species function with such perfect integration that they effectively operate as a single organism, sharing resources, responding to threats, and even reproducing as a unified system, rather than as individual species. What puzzles researchers is the level of coordination these ecosystems display. They respond to disturbances with organized system-wide reactions that suggest centralized control rather than the emergent behaviors typically seen in conventional ecosystems. Even more baffling is evidence suggesting these ecosystems possess distributed information processing capabilities, essentially collective intelligence emerging from the interaction of multiple species rather than residing in any individual organism. Some theoretical biologists propose these might represent a higher level of evolutionary organization, essentially ecosystems that have become so tightly integrated through coevolution that they've become functional superorganisms. Others suggest they could be evidence of distributed consciousness, perhaps intelligence and awareness emerging at the ecosystem level through networks of interaction that create cognitive capabilities beyond those of any constituent species. What makes these unified ecosystems particularly significant is their implication for our understanding of both ecology and consciousness. They suggest that what we recognize as organism-level properties, like integrated function and centralized control, might also emerge at higher levels of biological organization. Indigenous ecological knowledge from multiple maritime cultures includes frameworks that view certain marine ecosystems as unified entities rather than collections of separate species, perspectives long dismissed as metaphorical, but which these observations partially vindicate. Whether representing extreme cases of ecological integration or evidence of emergence of organism-like properties at ecosystem scales, these unified communities suggest the deep ocean contains levels of biological organization beyond those recognized by conventional ecology. Perhaps what we consider the fundamental unit of life, the individual organism, represents just one level of a deeper hierarchy, with similar properties of integration, responsiveness, and self-regulation emerging at both smaller scales, cells, organelles, and larger ones, ecosystems, perhaps even the biosphere itself. Now let's explore one of the most recently documented and least understood communication mysteries, the evidence of what appears to be a planetary-scale information network operating through the deep ocean. Oceanographers studying low-frequency acoustic and electromagnetic patterns in the deep sea have discovered what appears to be a global communication system, organized signals traveling through the ocean in patterns too regular and information-dense to be explained by known natural phenomena. What puzzles researchers is that these communication patterns don't match any known human technology. They use frequencies, modulation methods, and encryption approaches that appear more advanced than current human capabilities. Even more baffling is the age of this apparent network. Trace evidence suggests similar signal patterns have been propagating through the oceans for thousands or perhaps millions of years, long predating human technology. Some marine scientists propose these might be communications between cetacean species like whales and dolphins, perhaps revealing that these marine mammals possess far more sophisticated language and technology than we've recognized. Others suggest they could be evidence of an entirely unknown intelligence evolved in the deep ocean, perhaps species we haven't yet discovered, that have developed advanced communication systems independently of surface civilization. What makes this global ocean network particularly significant is its implication for our understanding of intelligence on our own planet. It suggests advanced information exchange may have evolved in the oceans long before humans developed similar capabilities on land. Military intelligence agencies have reportedly maintained classified programs monitoring these communications for decades, with some sources suggesting occasional success in decoding portions of the information being exchanged. Whether representing unknown capabilities of known marine species or evidence of intelligence we haven't yet discovered, this communication network suggests the ocean may contain sophisticated information exchange systems that have operated alongside human civilization without our awareness. Perhaps what we consider a uniquely human achievement, global information networks, was preceded by an older, more established communication system that has been operating in the oceans for millennia, connecting intelligences we've barely begun to understand. Let's delve into one of the most persistently reported yet scientifically challenging psychological mysteries, the consistent accounts of what appears to be direct communication with the ocean itself. Deep-sea explorers, professional divers, and submersible crews with no history of psychological instability consistently report experiencing what they describe as direct communication with the ocean as an entity. Not metaphorical impressions, but specific, detailed information transfer experienced as communication from the sea itself. What puzzles psychologists is the consistency of these experiences across different individuals with no prior knowledge of the phenomenon. People with different cultural backgrounds and expectations report remarkably similar experiences of receiving specific information from what they perceive as the ocean's consciousness. Even more baffling is that this transmitted information often contains verifiable details about distant locations or conditions that the individuals could not have known through conventional means. Specifics about seafloor formations, biological communities, or oceanic conditions later confirmed through objective measurement. Some marine scientists propose these might be caused by electromagnetic fields generated by certain geological formations affecting the human brain, essentially triggering specific neural patterns that create the subjective experience of communication. Others suggest they could be evidence of distributed information processing in the ocean itself, perhaps vast networks of marine organisms collectively generating patterns that human brains can sometimes detect and interpret as communication. What makes these communication experiences particularly significant is their historical persistence. Similar accounts appear in maritime records dating back centuries, with remarkably consistent descriptions despite the observers having no contact with each other. Indigenous maritime traditions from cultures worldwide include practices for listening to the sea or hearing the ocean's voice, techniques for obtaining specific information through what is experienced as direct communication with the ocean as a conscious entity. Whether representing neurological effects from specific environmental conditions or evidence of something more extraordinary. These consistent communication experiences suggest the human brain may be capable of information exchange with its environment through channels we don't yet scientifically recognize. Perhaps what we dismiss as impossible, direct communication with a non-human planetary system, represents a capability of human consciousness that manifests under the unique conditions of the deep ocean, allowing our minds to interface with patterns of information normally beyond our awareness. As we continue to explore these mysteries, a troubling pattern emerges, not just in what we're discovering, but in how we respond to these discoveries. Time and again, researchers document phenomena that challenge our fundamental assumptions, only to have their findings relegated to classified military applications, or dismissed by mainstream science as measurement error or misinterpretation. Our scientific institutions, built on models developed primarily from terrestrial observation, often lack frameworks for understanding phenomena that emerge in the alien conditions of the deep ocean. What we cannot immediately explain through existing paradigms, we tend to ignore, creating blind spots in our knowledge that may contain the very insights most crucial for understanding our planet and ourselves. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of these deep-sea mysteries isn't the phenomena themselves, but what they reveal about the limitations of our approach to knowledge, our tendency to dismiss what doesn't fit our existing models, rather than expanding those models to accommodate new observations. The history of science is filled with phenomena, once dismissed as impossible, that later became foundational to new understanding, from quantum entanglement to neuroplasticity. Concepts initially rejected often become central to revolutionary advances. What currently unexplainable deep-sea phenomena might contain the seeds of tomorrow's scientific revolutions, insights that could transform our understanding of physics, biology, consciousness, or reality itself. What solutions to humanity's most pressing problems might be hiding in evolutionary adaptations or physical processes we've dismissed because they don't conform to our current scientific expectations? As we stand at the edge of climate crisis, resource depletion, and technological transformation, can we afford to ignore potential knowledge simply because it challenges our comfortable assumptions? Perhaps the greatest unexplained mystery isn't any specific deep-sea phenomenon, but our own reluctance to embrace the unknown, our collective hesitation to venture beyond the boundaries of established understanding into the true frontiers of knowledge.